The Winterfell godswood slept beneath a pall of late autumn mist, its ancient heart tree bleeding red leaves that drifted like scattered embers onto the dark, still water. Jon Snow stood alone at the pool's edge. The chill gnawed through the black wool of his cloak, yet he scarcely felt it. His thoughts were a louder cold, clattering in his skull. In the north, the first frosts always tasted of memory, of Ghost loping white-furred beside him, of Robb's laughter in the practice yard, of vows whispered to a mother he never knew. But on this dawn the air carried something stranger. The scent of storm-blown salt and budding orange blossoms, foreign to the wolfswood, heralding a future he could hardly name. A soft footfall disturbed the leaves. Sansa moved like a shadow in dove-gray velvet, her hair the burnished hue of new copper pennies. She said nothing until she reached Jon's side. Together they watched thin ribbons of mist coil around the carved face in the weirwood. "They are arriving," she murmured at last. "Gendry Baratheon rides at their head." He brought his cousin, Lady Cassana. A ghost of a smile touched her mouth. "She looks terrified of the north. Too many tales of snow-hulled monsters, I think." Jon answered only with a nod. A month ago, Davos Seaworth's raven had carried Lord Gendry's proposal. A marriage to bind House Stark and House Baratheon, to stitch together kingdoms frayed by war. The raven's black wings seemed still to beat in Jon's mind. A king's blood in both their veins, Davos wrote. Robert's bastards and Eddard's secret son, each forged in shadow, each now standing in daylight. But the pact required a bride, and Gendry had none to spare, except one shy, sharp-eyed cousin raised in Tartha's distant green hills. Lady Cassana Baratheon, named for Robert's mother, sister to no great lords, heir only to stories older than Dragonstone's black cliffs. She was Brienne's niece, some whispered, a detail Davos had not confirmed. It mattered little. What mattered was the stag and wolf, antlers interlocking with snarling jaws, cast together in bronze upon a common shield. "Does she know?" Jon asked quietly. "That you are not Ned Stark's son?" Sansa's gaze flicked toward his. "Gendry knows, so Cassana must. Secrets rot alliances faster than winter winds. But she will not speak of it. Gendry defends bastards with the same zeal some lords reserve for castles." Jon exhaled, a plume of mist. "And what of the north? They mutter at their fires." Sansa's smile cooled. "But they remember you bled for them on the wall and beyond. They will not turn bristling spears upon you now. Not after everything. Everything. Hardhome's ashes, the shield hall's silent dead, the blade in his heart and Melisandre's red whispers dragging him back." He flexed his right hand, half expecting to feel the dagger again. Instead, he felt the warm brush of Sansa's fingers. "You deserve peace, Jon," she said. "Perhaps she will bring you some." Peace. A word as fragile as a soap bubble, gleaming with colors until it burst. They met in the great hall at midday, candles guttering beneath banners of direwolf gray and stag gold. Jon descended from the dais flanked by Lady Mormont and Ser Davos. Opposite, Lady Cassana entered beside Gendry and the tall sapphire knight who had once served Renly. Outside, snow began to fall, slow, ponderous flakes twisting in the gray light like ashes from a distant pyre. Cassana stopped 2 paces from Jon, lowering her hood. She was younger than he expected, perhaps 5 and 10. Her hair nut-brown and bound with a stag-bone clasp. Freckles peppered her nose, yet her eyes, dark, wary, intelligent, met his without flinching. "My lord," she caught herself, corrected with a slight dip of her head. "My king in the north. I am merely Jon." His voice felt rough. Titles weigh too heavy in this hall. A faint dimpling, not quite a smile. "Then I am simply Cassana. I have heard the wind in Winterfell's bones my entire ride. It speaks of old kings with eyes of ice." She glanced toward the high window, following the drifting flakes. "I think it forgives trespassers who come with open hands." Jon found himself answering the hint of humor in her tone. "Winterfell judges quietly, but it remembers kindness longer than slights." Lady Mormont cleared her throat, impatient. Gendry grinned crookedly. arms folded across a breastplate freshly lacquered in black and gold. "Well, that's pleasant. Shall we feast? Or do I need to hammer more iron into this calm?" Feast they did. Boar glazed with honey, trout stuffed with pine nuts, oat bread dense as stone. Cassandra spoke little, yet when Davos told of Blackwater Bay she listened, chin propped on linen-wrapped fingers. When Lyanna Mormont barked a challenge about spear throwing, she measured the girl with interest rather than scorn. Later, beneath the flicker of iron-caged torches lining Winterfell's corridor, Jon guided her toward the old library. Books were safer conversation than honor and bloodlines. He pushed open the door, letting the heavy oaken panels groan wide. Dust motes drifted like sun-kissed snowflakes around shelves crammed with cracked vellum. Cassandra stepped inside as though into a September father wrote, she whispered, voice hushed by dust, that the Starks kept more words than swords. I thought it a jest. My father believed swords are poor companions. They speak only of steel. Jon eased a leather-bound volume free, the lineages and histories of the great houses of the Seven Kingdoms, spidery script fading. My sister Arya disagreed, but she is far away now. Cassandra traced one finger along the desk's carved wolf heads. If I am to be a Stark, she swallowed, glanced at him. Should I begin here? Jon felt an unexpected warmth, like a fire catching on damp wood. Begin wherever you choose. A castle is only stone. It is people who give it breath. And you, she said firmly, intend to keep breathing? Her directness startled him, but he answered, I try. Cassandra nodded, seemingly satisfied. She opened the tome between them, its pages brittle under lamplight. Then we shall read together until these hallways remember our footsteps. She paused. May I learn to fight as well? Stories of Stark women swing heavier than quills. He chuckled. Lady Lyanna will insist on it. Moonlight found them hours later still bent over yellowed maps of the Dawn Age, inked depictions of giants clashing beneath the wall. When Cassandra finally excused herself, Jon lingered, fingertips grazing the page. In her wake lingered orange flower soap and something else. Hope, perhaps. The wedding was set for the first new moon of winter. Ravens sped from Winterfell to Bear Island, White Harbor, Deepwood Motte. None to the south, for King's Landing's iron throne rested brittle beneath Queen Cersei's narrowing gaze. But Gendry had sworn Storm's End to Jon, and in the crags of Dragonstone, Tyrion Lannister penned cautious words of support. If Daenerys Targaryen triumphed, a united North and Stormlands would temper her fire. 3 heads of the dragon, Davos murmured while Jon studied the letter. Sometimes the third is not a person but a pact, lad. Jon grunted. He felt again the pull of 2 names, Snow and Targaryen, like wolves snarling over a single corpse. But Cassandra's quiet presence had become an anchor against that storm. They trained each dawn in the yard, her stance lengthening, shoulders squaring under the weight of a blunted sword. Ghost prowled the wall walks, red eyes watchful. Cassandra unfearingly fed him scraps of venison. Jon suspected the direwolf judged her worthy long before Jon's own heart dared such. When Lord Manderley arrived, his retinue bright in sea-green cloaks, he bowed before Cassandra with florid courtesy. The North grows stronger. His jowls quivered with each word. Though I dare say King's Landing will quake at a wolf with stag antlers. Let them quake, Lyanna Mormont barked, armor too large for her thin shoulders yet worn with pride. The North remembers whose axes broke the Bolton chains. Cassandra inclined her head to the fierce child lady. Then I will remember whose voice carried farthest in the hall. Lyanna's grin showed a lurking dimple. Jon's chest eased. Still, not all banners flew without tatter. Lady Barbary Dustin sent regrets. The Riswells arrived late and sour-faced. Rumors wound through the campfires that Jon chased southern skirts while the Night's Watch dwindled. Gendry hammered a new shield each evening, antler and direwolf entwined, sparks flying like migrant stars. His wardenship carried weight, but words were lighter than gold in the north. 1 week before the wedding, a raven arrived from the wall, thin parchment, ink splattered, crows flying again. Tunnels beneath the ice stir. We need men, swords, wildfire if you have it. Signed only with a crude drawing of three-fingered hand, Dolorous Ed's mark. Jon's memories howled. The dead never slept, and winter bit deeper each dawn. He found Cassana in the Godswood, sparring with Lady Brienne beneath the watchful weirwood. Snowflakes clung to steel. Jon waited until their cloth-bound blades stilled. "I must ride north," he began, holding out the raven scrap. Cassana read swiftly, lips pressed thin. "Of course you must." Jon's breath misted. "The marriage. I will wed a man, not a shadow chained to hearth." She met his gaze. "Take me with you." Brienne coughed a protest, but Cassana stood firm. "Storm's End's daughters fear the sea more than snow. I have seen both. It will be cold," Jon warned. "Then I will learn to carry fire." They rode at dawn. Jon, Cassana, Davos, Brienne, Gendry, a score of Stark spears and Baratheon archers. The King's Road lay blanketed, its ruts frozen. Littlefinger's brothels in the gift smoldered, abandoned by owners who fled south of the Neck. Beyond Last Hearth, the world narrowed to white. Cassana's laughter surprised them all when a gust toppled Davos from his gelding. She helped him up, teasing of sailors better on waves than hooves. She coaxed Ghost to accept a saddle-rolled pelt about his shoulders, muttering that heroes deserved warmth too. At night she sat beside Jon, hands outstretched to a meager fire, telling tales of Stonehelm's salty breezes and of Brienne teaching her to swim in Blackwater Bay. Her voice was low, cadenced, each word a small torch in the darkness. 3 days' ride from Castle Black, wind carried a stench Jon knew too well. Rot, wildling smoke, cold flesh walking. They pressed on. The wall loomed, a solid sky-blue cliff, yet watchfires burned high alive. Dolorous Ed greeted them at the gate, eyes sunken. The dead pressed 2 knights back. "We held. Barely." He blinked at Cassana's Baratheon cloak. "New recruits? Highborn ones at that." "An ally," Jon said. Cassana offered her gloved hand. Ed shook it gingerly, as if half convinced it might shatter. They found the courtyard strewn with soot and shattered limbs of ice. Corpses smoldered in a pit, arrows salted with dragonglass jutting. Cassana stared, lips whitened, but did not look away. That night, Jon told her under the dim lanterns of an abandoned maester's tower about resurrection, about swords of fire and betrayal bled into snow. She listened, fingers interlaced with his. "When I fell at Castle Black," he finished, "I dreamed of a wood dark and deep. A woman called me back with crimson on her lips. I answered. Ever since, I have wondered if life after such a call is truly mine." Cassana's grip tightened. "Life is not coined to be weighed on a scale. It is motion, breath, choice. You chose to rise. That choice forged every step you stand upon now." Jon stared at her, heartbeat loud in his ears. Stormlight seemed to glow behind her eyes. He kissed her, gentle as snowfall upon stone. Somewhere Ghost huffed approval. The dead returned 2 nights later, shuffling out of dark pines beneath a crescent moon. Jon met them with Valyrian steel. Cassana loosed flaming arrows, her stance steady atop Eastwatch's battlement. Brienne fought like a whirlwind, shield ringing with each frost-rimmed blow. Gendry's hammer shattered ribcages already cracked by death. At dawn the corpses lay smoldering on the ice river, and the wall stood unbreached. When the last ember flickered, Ed trudged to Jon, exhaustion etched in every line. "That buys us a month at best, but perhaps a month is enough." "For what?" Cassana asked. "To plan," Jon answered. His gaze danced from the wall southward, as if through snow and stone he saw Winterfell's distant towers. "To forge." He looked at her then, and the weariness that bowed his shoulders receded, for an instant. "Will you still wed a man who owes fealty to too many ghosts?" Cassana wiped ash from her cheek with a soot-stained sleeve. The sun rose behind her, casting a halo of pale gold. "I will wed the man who chose to fight them," she said simply. They returned to Winterfell as midwinter blizzards howled across the barrows. The castle gates groaned open to a cheering throng. Lady Mormont's voice pierced the uproar, acclaiming the victors of the night. Yet Jon noted Sansa's tight smile, the shadows under her eyes. Ravens brought darker tidings while Jon rode. Daenerys had crossed the Trident with dragons on wing. King's Landing braced itself in wildfire and fear. The realm stood upon a sword's edge. But this day belonged to hope. Beneath swaying lanterns, Jon and Cassandra spoke vows before the heart tree, its red sap shining like wine. Ghost sat sentinel. Gendry hammered the stag and wolf sigil onto a silver disc worn about their joined hands. The old gods seemed to sigh through the leaves, as though remembering ancient pacts of ice and storm. In the feast that followed, singers lifted voices over harp and drum. Jon barely tasted the savory pies. He watched Cassandra laugh with young Beth Castle, saw her flushed cheeks, her smile as bright as the candle flames dancing in her hair. That joy gilded every corner of the hall, brushing away the cobweb dread that clung inside him. For a heartbeat, he allowed himself to believe in spring. Later, when torches guttered low and the revelers drifted to slumber, Jon led Cassandra through empty corridors silvered with moonlight. Snow whispered outside arrow slits. In the solar of the ancient kings he paused, turning to her. "Winter is long," he said hoarsely. "I cannot promise sunlight, only the fight for it." Cassandra rested her palm flat upon his heart. "Then let us be the forge and the hammer, shaping light from iron darkness." Together, they kissed, and the old stones seemed to warm beneath their feet. Days folded into weeks. Cassandra walked Winterfell's ramparts, learning the rhythms of the castle. The smithy's clang at dawn, the kennel's chorus, the quiet moment when the gods would pool mirrored twilight's first star. She joined the small calm council, listening more than speaking. When she spoke, her questions cut through tangles of dispute like a keen knife. Jon watched her win the loyalty of men and women who once muttered at the thought of southern brides. She sparred daily with Brienne, each bout adding new confidence to her stride. Yet at night she would slip her hand into Jon's beneath the firs and murmur her doubts. Could she truly stand between North and Stormlands if war thundered across both? "You stand already," he would answer, drawing her close. "And together we do not fall. But war cares little for lovers' oaths." A raven came from Old Town. Queen Cersei burned a cache of wildfire beneath Flea Bottom, killing thousands, blaming dragons. Daenerys' host answered with dragon flame, Ashford Tower reduced to smoking rubble. The Reach bled green. Winterfell's war council grew heated. Manderly urged open alliance with the Dragon Queen. Karstark warned of Mad King echoes. Tormund Giantsbane, red beard wagging, cared only for bread and mead. Through it all Cassandra sat at Jon's right hand, her calm steadying him. One night after council she unrolled a weathered parchment across their chamber table. A map of Westeros annotated in tidy, looping script. "Strength lies where fear forgets to look," she said, tapping the Stormlands. Queen Cersei counts the Stormlands leaderless. She forgets Gendry Baratheon now holds Robert's hammer. With Dragonstone's fleet and Manderly's ships, we could land at Storm's End, secure the coast, march northward before King's Landing spies can tally our banners. Jon rubbed his chin, studying the coastline. "It risks dividing our forces. It creates two fronts Daenerys cannot scorch at once." Her eyes glittered. "A dragon may turn in mid-air, but an army must choose its road." Jon looked up, remembering the green boy who once dreamed only of Bastard's Tower and quiet belonging. The future looming felt vast and terrible. Yet at this table sat a woman who wielded possibility as deftly as she swung a sword. "I never thought to plan war with my wife," he said. Cassandra's mouth quirked. "I prefer planning victory." He kissed her knuckles. "Then we planned together." Snow thickened to drifts waist-high. Winterfell's towers vanished in swirls of white. But within the great hall, warmth thrummed. Smiths reforging chainmail, scribes copying orders, ravens launched to Dreadfort, Torrens Square, Bear Island. Gendry supervised a forge, shaping spearheads inscribed with both sigils. He joked of naming the weapon Stormfangs. The night before their departure, Jon found Cassandra standing again in the library. She cradled a thin, leather-bound volume, A History of Storm's End, its pages smelling of sea salt and mildew. "My father read this by candlelight," she said softly. "He swore the walls would never fall so long as storms crash and stag hearts beat. He hoped to see them rise bright again." Jon slipped an arm around her waist. "He will. We will." Cassandra closed the book, gaze distant. "If Storm's End stands, the realm may finally glimpse what comes after fire and ice. Something gentler." Jon pressed his forehead to hers. "Gentle can wait until the last enemy falls. Then let us fell them swiftly." She set the tome aside and drew him close, the scent of orange blossom still clinging despite months of frost. Together they listened to winter's hush, as if the night itself held breath. Dawn broke red and violent. Snow clouds parted long enough for a bar of crimson light to crown the eastern horizon. Their company assembled in the yard. Stark spears clad in gray cloaks, Baratheon archers beneath black gold banners, free folk riders astride shaggy ponies. At their head rode Jon in fur-lined black, Longclaw strapped across his back. Beside him Cassandra wore dark green surcoat over mail, antler brooch clasping a direwolf pelt mantle. Sansa embraced Jon, whispered counsel he would carry like a talisman. Arya was still far abroad, a ghost on the wind, but her Valyrian dagger hung at Jon's belt, its weight both memory and promise. Gendry clasped Jon's forearm, eyes bright beneath soot-smeared brow. Brienne guided her destrier into formation, blue cloak rippling. Jon raised his voice, carrying across the yard. "Winterfell has kept us. Storm's End calls us. We march not for conquest but for the living who long to breathe past nightfall. We march for children who deserve more than charred bones and silent gods." Snow whispered across iron helms. Hearts thundered. And Cassandra, lifting her antlered helm beneath the pale sun, answered, "For the dawn that belongs to us all." With a thunder of hooves they rode, banners snapping like sails in a storm wind. Behind them, Winterfell's heart tree watched, crimson tears freezing upon pale bark, as the wolf and stag charged so. Thward to meet fire with steel, and darkness with a dream of something newly forged. The riverlands awaited, charred fields, toppled sepulchres, frightened small folk clinging to shattered walls. Word spread of the wolf-stag host. Mothers whispered it in hay-strewn lofts. Cells' words cursed it in alehouses. Some vowed Jon Snow carried a sword of dawnlight. Others claimed Cassandra Baratheon rode a ghost-white mare untouched by rain. Truth mattered less than rumor, for rumor seeded hope, and hope sprouted rebellion even in salted soil. At Harrenhal's blackened ruin they paused. Jon studied its melted towers glinting like slag under sun. "A dragon's shadow lingers long," he said. Cassandra touched his elbow. "So does courage, and both are born of flame." They left 300 men to garrison the ruin, banners planted in ash. North and Stormlands side by side, fluttering where once only stone screamed. Days later ravens brought tidings. Daenerys's dragons clashed above the Blackwater rush, Rhaegal wounded, Cersei slain by her own wildfire caches. King's Landing burned. From the hill of Rhaenys ruin sept to the gate of the gods, smoke rose in columns visible for 50 leagues. Refugees fled like ants from a torch. Jon felt the news as cold ash in his lungs. A queen forged in exile now wielded power unchecked. But Cassandra unfurled the fresh reports across their pavilion table. "Burned though it is, the capital is bleeding. Daenerys must nurse her wounded dragon, stack order upon ruined blocks. She will not strike westward soon. That grants us the season." "To do what?" Davos asked, beard bristling. Cassandra tapped Storm's End. "To claim my father's halls, to show the realm another banner still flutters unburned." Jon met her gaze. "And after, she said softly, "fire meets iron cooled by northern snow." They marched through Bitterbridge under winter rain. Brienne's scouts cut apart Lannister outriders seeking plunder. Free folk archers loosed arrows at gold cloaks turned brigands. Cassandra rode at Jon's side, rain plastering her hair, Yet her laughter rang when lightning forked across the sky, the sound startling, alive. On the banks of Cockleswent, a farmer's son knelt before them, offering a battered wooden toy stag. "Mother said the stag fights storms," he whispered. Cassana dismounted, knelt, pressed the toy into Jon's hands. He in turn placed Ghost's white fur tuft, a token of the direwolf's winter coat, into the boy's palm. "Storms pass," Jon promised, voice thick, "and some stags endure." That night Cassana lay wakeful in their shared tent, eyes reflecting candle glow. "If we fall," she began. Jon silenced her with a finger against her lips. "Then we rise again, if not in flesh then in tales. And tales wield power no sword can cut." She drew his hand to rest over her heartbeat. "I would rather live, than live beside me." He lowered his forehead to hers. "And let tomorrow's fears wait until dawn." Outside, rain drummed the canvas, steady as distant hoofbeats. The walls of Storm's End rose from the green-gray dawn like the ribs of a sleeping giant, waves smashing foam against sheer sea-hewn stone. Bannerless they stood, no stag, no crowned hart, only gulls wheeling above ramparts eroded by salt wind. Gendry rode ahead, hammer lofted. Trumpets sounded, gates creaked open. Inside, the garrison knelt, for they were Stormlanders weary of shifting overlords. Gendry, voice breaking, swore to hold their oaths gentle. Cassana slipped from her saddle, dropped to her knees upon cracked flagstones, pressing a palm flat to the cold stone. Tears glistened unshed. Jon offered his gloved hand. She rose, fingers tightening round his. Together they mounted the stairs toward the wind-lashed battlements. The sea spread infinite, pewter dark, restless. Cassana spoke, words whipped by gusts. Here Robert dreamed of dragons roaring across the sky. Here Stannis brooded on honor like a blade too sharp to sheath. And here, Jon's cloak snapped behind him. Here we will show the realm a crown is not forged in flame alone. Cassana turned to him, hair snarled by salt. "A crown? I want none. I want change." "Then we carry change on our shoulders," Jon said as thunder rolled, "a weight heavier than gold." Below, in the castle yard, stark gray and Baratheon gold banners unfurled side by side. Men cheered, their voices snatched by the gale, hurled seaward like gull cries. For a heartbeat, Jon felt the world tip toward possibility. And on a far-off horizon, beyond the reach of mortal eyes, a wounded green dragon circled smoke-wreathed spires, its roar echoing across a realm in shatter. War uncoiled anew, and the newly forged house would soon face the furnace of its making. But for this moment, atop Storm's End's ancient wall, Jon Snow and Cassana Baratheon clasped hands, wolf and stag, ice and storm, and looked eastward with eyes unflinching, hearts tempered, ready to carve dawn from the darkness yet to come. The first full dawn after Storm's End changed hands bled mauve and pewter across the sea, the color of bruises healing. Jon Snow woke before the trumpets, before even the gulls began their quarrelsome circling, and walked the topmost parapet alone. Wind licked at his cheeks with a salt-sharp tongue. Far below, breakers hammered the cliff like a smith's mallet upon an unyielding anvil. Each strike echoed within his ribs, a reminder that the world would not be still merely because a wolf and a stag had clasped hands. Behind him, the garrison stirred. Blacksmiths stoked new forges in what had once been Stannis Baratheon's grim mustering yard, their bellows coughing sparks into the gray. Sentries shuffled along the walls, stamping feet for warmth, calling the hour in gruff voices that faded into the roar of the tide. Yet the castle's old stones, cracked by centuries of storm, felt different beneath Jon's gloved fingers, lighter somehow, as though absorbing the breath of new vows. He let his palm rest upon the weather-smoothed Merlin and watched the horizon until he felt the presence at his back without needing to turn. Cassana Baratheon approached with the measured pace she used in the yard when testing a new blade, poised, centered, alert to any subtle shift. She had abandoned the heavy velvet of Winterfell for a surcoat of dark green wool sewn with a subtle pattern of direwolf and stag intertwined. Salt spray flecked her braid, turning the brown strands nearly silver in the dawn. She stopped beside him with no formal greeting and leaned elbows on rough stone, eyes on the water. "Gendry says the lower wells tasted of rust," she said after a long moment. "Tyrion's ravens claim Cersei emptied the castle of every grain sack on her retreat. The small folk in the shadow of the wall have eaten little but sardines for a fortnight." She drew a breath that rattled faintly in the wind. Yet the wind smells of beginnings. Jon considered the scent. Brine layered over cold iron, distant seaweed, char from last night's beacon fires, and somewhere just beneath all that a thread of orange blossom clinging stubbornly to her cloak. Beginnings. The word felt fragile. He had lived enough hours where dawn delivered only new burdens. "Storm's End stood 1,000 years before we breathed," he said, "and will stand long after. But walls do not feed bellies and banners do not mend bones. Then we mend them." She straightened, the first golden shard of sunlight flashing against the antler-shaped brooch at her throat. "We have wheat ships in White Harbor. Manderley's fleet sails south the instant the winds shift. Your sister wrote that the grain stores survived Greyjoy raids. Wyman's generosity comes often braided to conditions." Jon's mouth twitched, usually involving pies. Cassana's answering smile was quick, bright as steel catching light. "Then let us welcome his pies. Storm's End might choke on them, but better choke on crust than on ash." Steps echoed on stone. Davos Seaworth emerged from the stairwell, cloak flapping like a half-furled sail. His weathered face bore sleepless worry. "My lord," he said to Jon, dipping his head to Cassana as well. "Riders from the Marchlands arrived in the night. They swear fealty, claim to carry axes for the true blood of Robert Baratheon." His gaze flicked toward Cassana. "They'll want to meet the lady who carries that blood. It will be done." Cassana's tone held neither eagerness nor dread, only steady acceptance. Davos nodded, but did not leave. Jon raised an eyebrow. "There's more." Davos produced a rolled parchment sealed with soft yellow wax stamped by a lion's paw, Lannister. From Tarbeck Hall. "Ser Harris Swift now declares himself Warden of the Stormlands in right of Tommen Baratheon. May the Seven guide his dear lost soul." The old knight spat seawater's aftertaste from his mouth. "He summons all lords to Casterly Rock for council under Queen Daenerys' new peace." Jon cracked the seal, scanned the ornate hand. "Peace built on ash smells sharply of carrion." He folded the letter. "Either Ser Harris is a fool or a puppet. Perhaps both." Cassana reached, brushed her fingers across the parchment's frayed edge. "Or he senses a realm desperate for certainty. Even a pretender's crown can seem solid when smoke still curls above King's Landing." Jon looked south, where the sky smudged brown over the curve of the world. He remembered the smell of dragonfire at Hardhome, the sick sweetness of burnt flesh. Daenerys rests her wounded dragon at the Red Keep. Even wounded, one is plenty. We cannot meet her in open field until we have weight enough to grasp her gaze. "Wait we gather now," Cassana said. "Storm's End will ring with hammers day and night." Davos cleared his throat. "About hammers, Gendry asks you both to see the lower forge. Something you'll want to witness, he claims. And when Gendry claims, I've learned to attend." The lower forge lay tucked inside the oldest bastion, walls bulging from 1,000 partial collapses and rebuildings. Heat snarled through the doorway like a living thing. Gendry Baratheon, shoulders glistening, worked at the anvil with bare arms scrawled by fresh burns. Sparks cascaded off the head of his hammer in fountains of gold. Around him apprentices pumped bellows and plunged glowing bars into brine with hissing shrieks. He did not pause until his hammer beat a last ringing note into the air. Then he turned, wiping sweat with the back of his forearm, dark curls sticking to his brow. "My king." He bobbed a stiff nod to Jon, then to Cassana. "My lady," a wry grin. "Thought you'd fancy seeing what we made of your wedding gift." Jon frowned. "I gave no gift. You gave trust." Gendry hefted the object on the anvil, a shield the size of a small tabletop, face still cooling, colors muted by scorching. With tongs he lifted it, set it upright for them to see. Upon dull black iron, a dire wolf of hammered silver prowled left to right, but its jaws clasped a golden antler. The antler curved back under the wolf's chin to form a circle encompassing them both. Within the circle, Gendry had etched a single word in High Valyrian script. Hentes, forge. It's only a captain's shield for now, Gendry said. But a captain will carry your house before armies who never heard of such union. Let Lannister parchment tremble. Cassana stepped closer. Firelight kissed the shield. She stretched a gloved hand, not quite touching the metal. Thank you. No need. Gendry's grin widened. Just promise you'll let me hit something with it when the dragons come. Jon chuckled despite himself, but the laugh died when a distant horn blasted twice from the ramparts. Davos stiffened. Sail, he muttered. Unfriendly by the pitch. Jon exchanged a look with Cassana, both remembering burn-black sails bearing Kraken sigils. Greyjoy, they hurried back into the raw wind. From the battlements, the sea revealed a smattering of dark shapes slipping around the headland, longships, oars flashing like insect legs. But the prow figureheads were not Kraken tentacles. They bore a twisted lion clutching a severed dragon tail, paint flaking, yet the mockery clear. Above the lead ship snapped a banner quartered red and gold with a ragged white dragon silhouette. Mercenary work. They'd not brave these seas for plunder alone, Davos murmured. Reavers hired to bruise our newfound pride. Jon signaled the horn again. Archers hurried to merlins, knocking arrows wrapped in linen soaked overnight in oil. Cassana scanned the shore where narrow strips of coarse sand offered potential landing. They choose the cove east of the Breakfong, she predicted. Shelter from wind, easy shelves to beach. Good eyes, Jon said. I'll lead 30 Northmen around the bluff. Strike from above. I ride with you, she answered. That shield is meant to be blooded sooner than expected. Gendry spat, hefted a fresh warhammer. Brienne rallies Stormlander pikes behind. Jon almost ordered Cassana back but swallowed it. Equal, she had insisted. Equal she would remain. Instead he beckoned Ghost, who melted from the stairwell's shadow, crimson eyes fixed on distant hulls. They reached the bluff through goat paths slick with moss. Below, men were already splashing knee-deep to steady ships. Their helms bore rag-cloaked lion tails. At the center prow a captain in half-plate hollered orders. Jon counted 50, perhaps 60. Enough to raise fisher huts, kill peasants, carry tales of stark weakness. Cassana crouched low beside him, shield strapped to her forearm, borrowed Stormlander spear in fist. Her eyes tracked the beach with slow precision. Captain first, she breathed. Disrupt command. Jon nodded. He raised 2 fingers. Archers behind readied. At his drop they loosed. Flaming shafts streaked downward, striking sand and wood. One embedded in a hull, peeling pitch like fruit skin. Another pierced the captain's thigh. He screamed, looked upward, and Jon led the charge. They bounded down switchbacks, steel clanging on rock. Ghost leapt past, a white arrow. Cassana kept pace, shield raised. Jon hit the first mercenary before the man managed to draw his rusted sword, driving Longclaw straight through leather and rib. He wrenched free in one motion, pivoted toward the captain stumbling for cover behind a broken mast section. Cassana reached him first. Her spear thrust low, sliding beneath the captain's raised buckler to hook behind his knee. The wounded thigh gave, he toppled. She reversed grip, brought the cusp down like a pick through his breastplate joint. When she pulled free, blood steamed on iron. More mercenaries rushed. Gendry's hammer crushed one helm flat. Stormlander pikes descended behind, stabbing. The beach erupted into brutal swirl. Firelight, blood spray, desperate shouts swallowed by surf. Jon danced through, every motion honed in knights against ice walkers. Parry, riposte, slice tendon, finish. Ghost hamstrung a man, leapt to another. Within minutes resistance broke. Survivors flung down arms, scrambling back to boats only to find the hulls ablaze. Davos's archers had soaked spare linen in pine tar. Flames licked up masts, black smoke curdling skyward. Some mercenaries chose the waves, diving into treacherous chop. Jon watched them vanish, iron mail dragging them into dark. When silence fell but for the crackle of burning wood and the crash of relentless surf, Jon realized Cassana stood mere paces away, shoulders heaving, wolf-stag shield nicked and blood-flecked. She held the spear but grounded, tip angled outward, as though expecting the sea itself to rise aggrieved. He moved to her side. Her face bore streaks of soot, a freckled smear of blood across her cheekbone. Another's blood. Her chest rose, fell. Eyes still wide, bright. "You fought well," he said. She answered through slow breaths. "Spears speak louder than parchment." A grunt from the sand drew their attention. The captain yet wheezed, blood pooling. Cassana knelt beside him. "Who hired you?" He spat froth. "Gold is blind to names." Jon stepped forward but Cassana raised a hand. "Wait." She stripped the captain's gauntlet, revealing scarred knuckles etched crude with twin lions over a lily. House Lorch's disgraced cadet branch, bannermen once of Casterly Rock. "You sailed far under illusions," she said. "Know the shore you bled upon now belongs to its people, not your coin." The mercenary tried to curse. The word ended in a rattle. Gendry approached, wiping hammer on sailcloth. "We send them back headless or let the tide carry word?" "Neither." Jon sheathed Longclaw. "We burn their corpses, spare the realm rot. Fire and salt cleanse." He surveyed the survivors crouched under guard. "Remind them whose justice they met. Send them north to rebuild the fisher huts they meant to burn. A winter's work may open their eyes." Cassana nodded, rising, expression unreadable. 5 nights later the castle's repaired wells ran clear, and the first wagons of Manderley grain rolled through the gate, escorted by tall knights in sea-green cloaks. Old Lord Wyman rode a cushioned cart too narrow to call a carriage. His flesh sagged heavier than Jon remembered, jowls wobbling with each lurch. He kissed Cassana's hand, declared her as comely and unbending as a storm oak, and insisted the castle kitchens prepare 9 different pies to celebrate. Feasting filled the great hall with scents of venison and cinnamon, but outside the walls new tents multiplied. Marchland riders, Cape Wrath archers, Massey's hook boatmen come by land bearing nets. Not an army yet, but seeds. Each captain sought audience, swore blades for bread and chance at spoils once dragons fell. That night Sansa's raven arrived. Queen Daenerys crowned herself protector of the realm upon the ashes of the Great September and would receive fealty at Dragon Pit gates come the new moon. Thousands of refugees filled Rosby's roads. The Queen's unsullied patrolled Flea Bottom, spears uncompromising. Rhaegal, only partially healed, nested within Maegor's holdfast. Drogon circled nightly, a living omen. Jon gathered his council in the storm cellar, the one chamber where sea thunder drowned eavesdroppers. Davos, Gendry, Cassana, Brienne, Lyanna Mormont, small but fierce, and Ser Richard Horp of the Marchlands. Candles guttered in damp air. "We cannot ignore the crown's summons," Jon began. "If we fail to bend knee, we brand ourselves rebels. We've been branded since the dragons breathed on the trident," Lyanna snapped. "Better rebel beneath ice than slave beneath scales."
Ser Richard Tvirle da Green Mustache.
"Still, Queen's mercy can be swift for those who douse fires before they rage." Cassana leaned forward, fingers locked. "Daenerys believes she freed the realm from tyrants. She may yet accept a house forged of North and Stormlands if it offers unity. But we cannot march into the dragon's maw unprepared." Brienne nodded. "So we speak softly yet carry stout shields." Gendry smirked. "And bigger hammers." Davos unrolled a smudged chart. The coast from Crackclaw Point south to Blackwater Bay. Tyrion Lannister requested parley on Dragonstone. Claims he speaks for the Queen when reason fails. If we answer, we negotiate on rock not yet blackened by wildfire. Jon studied the map. Dragonstone's seat once belonged to my ancestors. That truth tasted strange, half bitter, half inevitable. Yet I have cast my lot with the wolf and stag. Still, Tyrion is no fool. We hear him. "I should go," Cassandra said softly. Silence pooled. She met Jon's eyes. Your blood stirs dragons, whether you claim it or no. The queen may look upon you as kin to supplant. I am less threat. There is no less threat at a D. Rhaegon's table, Jon argued, but Davos lifted a finger. Still, she has a point. The queen might see in the lady a bridge rather than challenge. Brienne shifted on her chair. Then I accompany her. As do I, Davos said. Jon's jaw tightened, yet he breathed. 3 is not an embassy. My king, Brienne said, voice level. Tyrion invited few so the queen's wariness does not sharpen. 3 will pass under dragons easier than a host. And I trust Davos and Brienne with my life, Cassandra added. Her gaze remained steady on Jon's, imploring but unyielding. He exhaled. Then sail at first tide. Take Seaworth's oath. She's swift. He curled and uncurled his right fist. But know that if Dragonstone proves trap, I ride south with every banner I can raise. Cassandra rose, circled the table, and took his hand. Should Dragonfire fall, remember the forge. Steel replenishes. Hearts once tempered hold heat. She pressed her forehead to his, murmured so only he heard, I will return. He closed eyes, breathing her in salt, smoke, orange blossom. The cove below Storm's End hid Seaworth's oath well. A sleek carrack painted wave gray. Dawn reddened the sky as Davos oversaw loading. Casks of lemon water, sacks of oats, spare sailcloth. Cassandra emerged clad in sea-green scale mail, sword belted high, shield strapped over travel pack. Brienne wore her sapphire cloak, freshly mended. The 2 women clasped forearms, warriors acknowledging fate's dice. Jon walked with Cassandra to the gangplank. Words felt heavy. He hunted for those with weight enough but not clanging with finality. He settled on truth simple as snow. Return to me. I will. She rose on toes, kissed him quick, fierce. And keep breathing. If the forge grows dim, he murmured against her brow. Remember Winterfell's fires. She smiled, a raven's wing flicker. Then she boarded. Davos barked orders. Sailors heaved lines. The tide pulled, oars splashed. Canvas unfurled like pale wings. Jon stood until the ship dwindled to a charcoal dash on the iron water. Ghost whined softly beside him. Jon rested a hand on the direwolf's great head. We plan, he muttered, and sharpen claws. Days stretched. Jon buried himself in labor, overseeing grain distribution to coastal villages, drilling new recruits, mapping supply lines to the King's Road. Gendry's forges rang night and day. Lyanna Mormont whipped Northman archers until they could feather a melon at 80 yards in storm gusts. Maester Theomore from Greenstone set broken arms of fisher lads who survived the mercenary raid, using nets as slings. Yet at dusk Jon found himself upon the same parapet where he'd first watched dawn with Cassandra. Each sunset painted the sky blood orange and melted to indigo while he searched for a dark speck on the horizon bearing return sails. None appeared. On the 7th night, Manderley's flagship breadbasket arrived, holds fat with wheat and salted cod. Its captain carried a sealed satchel, letters from White Harbor and a slim, narrow package wrapped in blue silk. Jon broke the wax. Sansa's written hand reported continued skirmishes with Bolton loyalists near the Weirwood Bar Rollins. She urged caution concerning rumors of cell sales massing at Duskendale under a Sellsword prince funded by Iron Bank coin. The package, she wrote, contained an heirloom dagger once belonging to their mother's mother. A blade forged of castle steel, supple as memory. Steel steadies the heart, the note ended. Jon drew the dagger from silk. It gleamed dull gray, hilt bound in direwolf leather. Balance perfect. He sheathed it at small of back, odd comfort blossoming. That very night a dream seized him. He wandered a field of obsidian glass, so black it drank starlight. In the sky 2 shapes wheeled, a pale direwolf chasing a red-winged stag. Beneath them a third hovered silent, a dragon stripped of scales, bones gleaming. The direwolf leapt. The stag interposed, antlers cradling wolf in protective cage. Dragon's jaw opened, but from its throat spilled only black snow. Jon woke gasping, salty taste of tears on tongue. Dawn shimmered silver. Interpretations eluded him, but urgency settled. He convened council. We send riders to Tarth, to Selmy lands, to Dorne's march. We raise a shield wall bigger than any dragon's shadow. He paced before the hearth. If Dragonstone's parley fails, we must hold a line the queen cannot burn without gutting her own grain path. Ser Richard traced a gauntlet across a map. A cordon from Cape Wrath to the Boneway is bold. We'd need Dornish consent. I fought beside spearmen of Sunspear on the wall, Jon said. Some owe me debts. He stabbed finger at the parchment. Besides, Dorne has never loved crowns forged farther north than the Red Mountains. Gendry chuckled. They love their vengeance more, so they'll talk. Lyanna Mormont slammed a fist. Send me as envoy. They'll think twice before scorning a girl half their size. Brienne normally might have spoken caution, Jon thought with a pang, but she sailed into uncertain sky. He exhaled. Lyanna, take 2 ravens and the seals of both Storm's End and Winterfell. Ride with 10 sworn shields. Speak truth. The young lady blinked, then puffed like a war-horned swan. I'll bring back spears or heads. Prefer spears, Jon said. On the 12th morning since Seaworth's oath had sailed, a black gull dropped onto the battlements carrying a ribbon-tied scroll. Jon's heart hammered. He untied it, unrolled. Anchored Blackwater Bay last eve. Queen permitted landing. Drogon circled but did not strike. Tyrion escorts us to Red Keep at noon. Spirits tense yet tempers holstered. I write from Dragonstone Solar. Davos quick with ink. Brienne stands guard. I watch waves roll and think of Storm's End's wind. We proceed under olive flag. Keep your forge bright. Cassana. Jon's grip tightened. Wax cracked under fingers. Relief curled through him. Alive. But olive flag was Parley's color. No guarantee once inside charred city walls. And Drogon's presence. He pictured obsidian wings blotting sun. He descended to the yard where hooves clattered and voices clashed. Double drills, he commanded. Prepare departure within a fortnight for march north to Blackwater. Gendry lifted a brow. Even if Parley yet stands? Especially. Jon stared south. We must show goodwill strong enough to Parley, yet resolve firm enough to withstand betrayal. That night he wrote 2 letters. One to Sansa, requesting additional grain and spare maesters to treat potential plague among refugees. Another to Lord Tarley's widowed sister near Horn Hill, asking if Reach troops still refuse dragon rule and offering safe harbor beneath United North and Storm banners. He ended each with the sigil Gendry had forged, wolf jaws clasping stag antlers. Ghost lay curled by the hearth as Jon sealed wax, every flicker of flame lining the direwolf's fur with coals. Jon watched for any omen in the beast's ear twitch, found none. On Dragonstone, Cassana pressed quill to parchment again near midnight after the olive flag meeting concluded. She wrote by lantern while Davos snored in the corner chair, Brienne standing sentinel at the arched doorway. Out over the dark sea, the night air smelled of sulfur and driftwood. She focused on steadying her hand. It trembled only slightly from exhaustion. I sat across from a queen whose eyes burn hotter than hearthstones. She scribbled. Tyrion warns half the realm's voices scream vengeance against Lannister ghosts. Half scream hunger. Most simply scream. The queen would rather cut throats than risk seeds of rebellion in fertile soil, but she listens still to reason, barely. She will not excuse Snow's claim if couched in secrets. She demands he fly banners under hers or fall under her dragons. Cassana paused, sucked a breath laced with smoke. In the courtyard below, unsullied patrolled, sandals whispering on stone. Riegel's distant croon vibrated seaward. Drogon remained at King's Landing, but his shadow stretched all the way across the bay. She felt its weight on her skull. She dipped quill again. Tyrion suggested a marriage of houses as balm. Stark heir to some chosen Westerosi lady of Daenerys's favor. I countered. The North will not swallow southern matches conjured by Dragonflame. He countered again. Dragons do not ask permission. We reached impasse softened only by wine thicker than arbor gold. Her script wavered, but she forced clarity. At dawn, we ride to capital by royal barge. I promised to carry words of compromise. Grain convoys across each region, a council of lords to rebuild what wildfire took, and for Jon, no crown, merely Lord of Winterfell and Shield of the Stormlands under Queen's justice. I know he may refuse. My heart weighs stone thinking it. Yet perhaps stone-tempered can build foundation where swords fail. A gust rattled shutters. Candle flames flickered. Brienne peered down hallway. Cassana signed, "Forge bright, love steady. I bring dawn." She sealed the letter with a drip of wax, imprinted shield seal, handed to a sailor bound for Seaworth's oath, readying to return north at first light. Then she lay upon too soft featherbed, stared at volcanic ceiling carving, and recited in her mind each step that led there. Orange blossoms in Winterfell snow, spear in mercenary captain's throat, shield catching dawnlight on Storm's End walls. She slept at last and dreamed of antlers weeping sap and wolves howling emerald fire. Storm's End roared awake under barrage practice, but midday horns sliced drills short. A black raven spiraled down to Jon's outstretched arm like the memory of the wall itself. Its scroll bore the sigil of the Night's Watch, though only ashes remained of tall columns. He unrolled, recognized Dolorous Ed's crabbed strokes mixed with Maester Sandor's tidy script. Ice flows shifting, dead sighted beyond Frostfangs in growing bands. Old magic churns open the ice lakes. Wall shards melt unnatural. We hold but fear rousing of something older beneath. Ravens lost to Wine's north. Send help or send prayers. Jon's blood iced. He had turned south chasing dragons while the true night gathered claws again. He called council that afternoon beneath a sky the color of bruised journey bread. "Dragons burn, dead rise," he said, voice flint. "We defend one front only to find the second at throat." Gendry swore colorful. Lyanna returned from Dorne with 3 spears, for broken ribs on bodyguard's chest, and promises of parley. Threw a dagger point down into the map at Winterfell. "We march north again." Jon rubbed his temple. "If I abandon Storm's End now, we lose all we've wrought. If I delay, the wall bleeds black blood we cannot replace." Ser Richard traced lines on map. Split host. Manderly's fleet sails ghosts north along east coast. Land at White Harbor. Ride by King's Road. You remain to hold south until your lady returns. Once alliance terms fixed, Crown may grant safe corridor for reinforcements. Jon stared at drawn lines until they blurred. Ghost whined. Or Crown may view troop movement as rebellion. Yet he knew in marrow he could not ignore Ed's plea. He decided before nightfall. "I ride with 500 chosen, free folk veterans, North pikemen, Stormland Rangers. We move light, swift. Gendry commands Storm's End with Ser Richard. Manderly sails north with extra grain. Lyanna accompanies fleet to rally northern houses south of Baratheon. When Cassana returns, she holds Storm's End until dragons or dead decide our next breath." No one argued. They all looked tired, but their eyes held embers. That night Jon sharpened Longclaw alone, each scrape across whetstone ringing his bones. He rolled Sansa's dagger handle between fingers, felt ghosts in both blades. When sleep finally stole over him, he dreamed of 3 stones glowing red. One north, one south, one beating inside a stagwolf shield abandoned on a dark beach. Cassana stepped from royal barge onto King's Landing's river gate at high noon. The city stank of wet ash and rotting tallow. She followed Tyrion through streets lined by silent crowds who once cheered Baratheon kings, now glaring at her antler brooch with haunted sockets. The destruction tore at her. Entire blocks flattened, timbers charred to skeletal shapes, children scavenging cinders for copper nails. At the Red Keep's base, Drogon's absence felt unnatural, as though air itself braced for his looming return. Unsullied parted ranks. Inside the ruined throne room, scaffolds rose around melted iron. Daenerys Targaryen stood robed in black and red at the dais, coiffed silver hair tied by dragonbone pins. Her violet eyes latched onto Cassana with unsettling intensity, as though measuring not just flesh but every possibility of future. Cassana bowed low. "Your Grace." Tyrion cleared throat, began introductions, but Daenerys lifted a hand. Silence. "You carry Robert's blood," she said, voice soft yet spine shivering. "And Ned Stark's allies' promise. Why come bearing both when the realm needs singular purpose?" Cassana straightened, meeting that burning gaze. "Purpose independent of fear, your grace." "Fear?" Daenerys repeated, tasting the syllable. "I have walked through fear's flames and emerged. Have you? I stepped into Dragonfire when the north lay frozen beneath the dead. Fear walked with me, yes." Violet eyes flickered, perhaps surprised. Then the queen descended 2 steps, gown sweeping ash. "Speak." Then, Lady of Storms and Snow. Cassana exhaled once, steadied heartbeat, and spoke of grain caravans, of councils representing bannermen, not just great houses, of rebuilding Sept and Guildhall, of healing more than conquering. She offered the shield seal, a symbol of union forging instead of fracturing. Daenerys listened, face unreadable until mention of Jon. "The wolf seeks crowns he rejects, yet others hand him," she said. "He once bent knee to me. Does he now bend again?" Cassana thought of Jon sharpening blades alone. "He bends to those who choose life over ash." "A riddle," Daenerys whispered. "Dragons unsheathe truth." She turned away. Unsullied stepped in. Tyrion murmured, "Her grace will deliberate. You shall sup in guest chambers." Brienne's sword hand hovered near hilt. Cassana laid a calming palm. Within the chamber, Davos paced. "Brina watched door." Cassana fished orange blossom vial from pouch, inhaled faint scent, letting memory steady nerves. Night fell and no summons came. Instead, at midnight, a silent dwarf in gold cloak slipped a folded parchment under their door and vanished. Cassana unfolded. Flea bottom burning again. Drogon returns by dawn. Leave by river gate if life means more than promises. No seal but the hand of Varys long dead or an admirer. Brienne unsheathed. Davos cursed softly. Cassana stared at the scribbles. She thought of Jon riding north, the wall's shadow, the forge flame. "Truth or trap?" Brienne warned. "Every step is both," Cassana said. She turned to Davos. "Can you secure a skiff?" "I..." The knight smiled crookedly. "Smuggling is a talent seldom lost. Then we leave at second hour. Head for the Kinslayer's bridge ruin. From there, river meets bay, the bay meets open sea." She fastened cloak. "We carry word home. And if unsullied close gate?" Brienne asked. Cassana lifted her shield. "Then we raise antlers and howl." Before false dawn they crept. The corridors echoed with distant screams. Smoke coiled along flagged floors. Somewhere outside, flames guttered anew. The slums burned as promised. Tyrion appeared from an alcove, eyes bleached by exhaustion. "I cannot caution enough." He pressed a small bronze token of lion's skull into Cassana's palm. "Across the sea in Pentos lives an exiled sea lord owing fortunes. Show him this. If the world falls, give yourselves at least one harbor." He bowed, short and sad, then slipped away. They found the river gate unguarded save 2 unsullied, cut down silently by Brienne's swift sword pommel to the temple. Non-lethal. Davos guided them through silted shallows to a waiting skiff hidden among dead reeds. They pushed off, muffled oars, slipped past collapsed docks where boat hulls bobbed like drunk insects. Behind, a deep roar shook the sky, an answering call. Drogon's silhouette appeared over Red Keep, wings blotting stars. Firelit glow flared along his throat. They bent to oars. Cassana's arms burned, muscles trembling. She kept eyes on the bay mouth, thin line of silver gray. The roar thundered again. A gout of flame speared downward behind. They did not look. Open water at last. Dawn cracked east horizon. Seaworth's oath pulled alongside, sails set by keen-eyed sailors. Deckhands hauled them aboard. Davos shouted orders. Brienne barreled below to arm ballista just in case. Cassana staggered to rail, panting. She looked back once. King's Landing a pyre still, black smoke scoring newborn light. She pressed hand to shield. "Forge bright," she whispered. Storm's End received them 4 days later. Cassandra stepped ashore to news of Jon's departure north. The information slammed her heart. Relief at his living ward with fear for distance. Gendry briefed her beneath torch glow. He rode like a wyvern's talon on wind. Left this. The smith handed a sealed letter, edges curled from constant handling. She broke wax. The dead stir. I could not wait. Trust the forge. Hold Storm's End. When dawn breaks on both fronts, we meet in Winterfell's Godswood. Until then, breathe. Signed simply, J. She folded parchment, pressed to lips. Around her, knights discussed unsullied incursions on Blackwater roads, Manderley fleet meeting storms near Sisterton, Dornish patrols massing at Sandstone. She inhaled the keep's damp air, tasting memory and foreboding. Prepare council, she said, and send ravens. North or south, dead or dragon, House Reforged stands. That night Cassandra climbed the parapet alone. The moon was a splinter above the restless sea. She closed eyes, imagined Jon somewhere between frostbit pines and luminous aurora, breath fogging in cold stolen from the grave. A prayer shaped on her tongue, not to new gods or old, but to the fire inside both of them. Below, waves pounded. Above, stars wheeled. Between, a shield waited to meet dawn, and dawn, relentless, was coming. Snow patterned the northern sky in shifting veils of silver, moon pale even at midday, as Jon Snow urged his courser through the Forsaken Pass. Wind keened across the serrated crags like a chorus of hungry wolves. 40 riders followed in single file, free folk with ice-rimmed braids, stark bowmen in patched mail, Stormlander rangers unaccustomed to the crack of frost beneath every hoof. Their breath steamed, then vanished, devoured by the same cold that gnawed steel to brittle knives. Jon rode ahead of the column, ghost padding at his stirrup. Every league northward banished the faint warmth that clung to him from Storm's End. The sense of leaving part of himself behind. Cassandra's laugh, her orange blossom scent, the quick tilt of her head when strategy intrigued her, stabbed deeper than the wind. Yet the raven from Dolorous Ed had spoken of tunnels rumbling, of ancient ice shifting. Duty had dragged Jon from hearths before. This time it dragged him from a hope he had only just begun to trust. At dusk they reached an abandoned wildling stead hidden in the tumbled pines west of Long Barrow. A crooked chimney thrust from collapsed rafters like a finger accusing the sky. Jon ordered a halt. Fires were dangerous so close to the haunted forest, but the men needed warmth lest swords slip from numb hands come sunrise. They built 3 small pits shielded by stone. Sparks spiraled upward, losing themselves among falling flakes. Jon paced the perimeter while his captains divided watch. The sky's blue-black dome bore no stars, only a cold pall pressing close. Ghost stopped once, hackles lifting, snout raised to unseen scents. Jon laid a gloved hand on the direwolf's flank. Do you feel them? Ghost rumbled deep in his chest, a bass note of warning. Jon scanned the darkness. Pines creaked. Nothing moved except the wind's tattered cloak. He returned to the steadshed and crouched beside Tormund Giantsbane, who fed the fire strips of dried elk. The wildling's red beard hung stiff with rime. These woods whisper old names tonight, Tormund muttered. Trees remember the Night's King more clearly than they remember daylight. He eyed Jon sideways. You sure the crow bastards still man the gate and not some ice white wearing black? We'll know tomorrow, Jon said. He took bread from his satchel but found his stomach unwilling. Instead he unrolled Cassandra's last letter, reading by the jittery light. Forge bright. I bring dawn. The words steadied him like a draught of hot wine. Still thinking of your little stag? Tormund nudged him with an elbow. Best marry a woman who can swing you by the heels if the dead grab your ankles. She got that look. Jon folded the parchment. She does. Good. A man needs a storm to keep his heart beating. Tormund grinned, teeth white in the dark. If we survive what waits beyond the ice, fill her belly fast. Realm loves an heir more than a legend. Jon snorted but felt warmth bloom under the chill. First eyed like a realm left to birth children in. Later he lay beneath his cloak, the direwolf's body blocking wind at his back. He slept fitfully, dreams fractured. Cassana on a beach of black glass, stag antlers aflame. Daenerys astride Drogon above a city of bones. Bran's pale eyes blinking open in a forest of whitewood, whispering of doors that open only once. Jon woke before dawn, pulse hammering. The cold tasted metallic, as though he had bitten a blade between his teeth. They rode under violet skies while the air itself seemed to crystallize. By midday, the jagged crown of the wall appeared, glimmering ghost blue. Jon reined in at a ridge. Even at this distance, he could hear faint groans. Ice shifting, cracking, like a leviathan stirring beneath frozen waves. Steam rose from fissures along the wall's base where hot springs once fed the Black Gate tunnels. Something had changed. The wall bled warmth it had stored for 10,000 winters. Dolorous Ed awaited at the Kingsroad Gate, gaunt cheeks grayer than the stones. His men swung the ice-fortified winch to raise the gate. It squealed like a dying hog. Jon dismounted and clasped Ed's gloved forearm. "Thought I'd have to write your name on the corpse roster," Ed muttered. "Good thing parchment's scarce." "What happened?" Jon asked. "Dead came 3 nights running." Ed's eyes darted to the dark treeline. "Not in hundreds yet, but enough to test us." Then the ice under the lake split. Heard water gurgling beneath. "Maester Sandor thinks something's melting from the bottom up." "The wall." Jon's voice felt too loud. "Or something under it." Ed led him into Castle Black's yard. The place smelled of boiled bark and scorched flesh. Burn pits still glowed faintly. Black-clad brothers shuffled, gaunt as shades. Jon felt a pang, so few remained. Ghost prowled among them, white against soot. Inside the common hall, Maester Sandor spread a cracked parchment map across a trestle table. Pockets of heat appear here, here, and here. His finger tapped places along the wall's underbelly. Steam vents that did not exist even last winter. If superheated water rises, structural integrity weakens. Jon traced the markings. Dragonglass forged into the wall by the children. Perhaps magic fails as well. Sandor's mouth thinned. Magic fails everywhere eventually, Lord Commander. Jon's title echoed like a ghost. He had abandoned command, yet here he stood again, swords awaiting orders. He inhaled. "We reinforce. Fell trees for ramparts south of the wall. Flood tunnels with rubble and ice boulders. I'll ride north tomorrow to scout the lakes." Silence. Then Ed wearily. "Would prefer never crossing north again, but I suppose I love dying for lost causes." Jon clapped his shoulder. "If death chases, we outride it." Storm's End woke Cassana Baratheon before dawn with the smell of seaweed burning in braziers, a superstitious custom of the local small folk to ward off shipwrecks. She shrugged into fur-lined brigandine, fastened the wolf-stag cloak. Court would convene in the Rain Tower antechamber where salt gusts slipped through arrow slits. At council, she found Gendry wiping soot from a parchment. "Iron Bank emissary met our factor yesterday," he reported. "They offer loans for grain shipments if we pledge future tariffs." The Smith Lord scowled. "Loans taste like chains." "Chains delay famine," Cassana answered. "We barter, not beg. Tell them Storm's End offers timber rights instead. Felled oak washed up on shore is worthless to us in wartime but valuable for Braavosi shipwrights." Gendry's brows rose. "Trading driftwood for gold." Robert would laugh. Outside the tower, horns blared. A single mournful note. Cassana stepped to the balcony. Ravens spiraled overhead. Black sails approached from the gullet bearing the sigil of House Velaryon, a pale seahorse on sea green. Behind them, half-dozen battered cogs flew gray cloth, no colors. Refugee vessels. The lead galley signaled parley. She descended to the yard where Captain Corlys Velaryon, son of the sea snake's distant cousin, dismounted, cloak dripping spray. "King's Landing becomes tomb," he announced. "Queen's dragons hold Red Keep, but fires rage unchecked in Flea Bottom. We escorted survivors. Poor folk from Rosby, Midlorn, Stokeworth." He glanced at Cassana's antler brooch. "Will Storm's End open gates?" Yes, she said. No man or woman pays coin for sanctuary. She turned to a waiting steward. Clear the eastern bailey. Erect tents. Kitchens double rations. Corlys bowed, relief softening his storm-creased face. Then his eyes flicked to the ramparts. Rumor crosses waves. The Wolf King marches north and dragons eye this keep. Cassana met his gaze. Let them eye. Wolves bite back. That evening she walked among new arrivals. Pale-faced mothers clutching infants. Smiths with bandaged arms. A septon carrying only a half-melted iron lantern. She listened to their stories. Drogon's shadow sweeping over the Blackwater. Gold cloaks turned looters. Tyrion escorted nobles into the Red Keep, then vanished. Cassana thanked each teller, offering bread, blankets. One boy, hair singed crisp at the ends, pressed a charred wooden knight into her palm. For the king that fights cold, he whispered. She ruffled his head, swallowed the lump in her throat. Night deepened, restless waves pounding walls. Cassana climbed the sea tower. Wind slapped her cloak like a sail. She rested hands on basalt, stared at constellations drowned by scudding clouds. She thought of Jon wandering ice wastes. Lightning flickered far south, storm brewing or dragons. Brienne emerged, sapphire cloak swirling. A rider approaches from Dorne, she called, bearing Lady Lyanna's seals. Minutes later, in the tactician's alcove, Cassana unrolled the sand-sealed scroll. Lyanna Mormont's bold hand declared, Spears of Sunspear pledge 3,000. They march north along Dornish March to join your host. I ride with them, a crude bear sigil stamped below. Brienne smiled at the news, but Cassana's relief fell under a shadow. If Dorne committed, war would solidify, not dissipate. She folded the scroll. We forge an anvil. Jon hammers from the ice side. We brace south. Brienne studied her. You fear for him. I fear for the realm if either of us fails. Cassana gripped the parapet. And for what becomes of hope when storm and winter meet? Brienne placed a gauntlet hand upon her shoulder. Hope we tempered. Steel holds. Cassana covered Brienne's hand with hers. Then may it never shatter. 2 days later, Jon Snow stood on the lip of a splintered ice lake 5 leagues north of the wall. The scene looked as though a comet's fist had punched through frozen crust. Shards wider than longships jutted like jagged fangs, steam coiling upward from black water. Snow hissed when it touched the surface. Beneath, something churned, sending pulses that lapped against the ice with deliberate rhythm. Heartbeats, slow and massive. Tormund muttered a rancid oath. Ice gods waking. Jon knelt, gloved hand hovering inches from the plume-warmed hole. The air carried rot, wet fur, stale grave. He motioned to the 2 rangers who lugged a bucket of green flame jars. Wildfire, Jon ordered. Crack open, drop deep. They obeyed, tossing 3 obsidian pots. Glass shattered. Neon green liquid sizzled on water. Seconds stretched. Then whump, smoke belched, but the water swallowed the fire as though it drank oil. Jon's stomach clenched. Not enough. They rode further, surveying other vents. Each identical. Fissure's bleeding heat, subtle throb. At last rays of wan sun slanted through swirling flakes. Late afternoon. Jon signaled return. Inside Castle Black, he convened a council of brothers and free folk chieftains. Creatures under the lakes, Jon reported. We faced ice spiders once, giants once. This is something else. Could be brood nests of frost WYRMS. Faces blanched. We collapsed the ice, suggested a ranger. Drop stone, timber, whatever weight we find. It might entomb them, Jon allowed, or it might not. We need dragonglass weapons for when they surface. He turned to Sandor. Inventory, enough for 500 blades, the maester replied, but forging takes days. Then we begin now. Jon nodded to Tormund. Send word to every free folk settlement south of Frostfang Peaks. Battle lines here. Tormund slammed fist to table. We'll fight, but walls alone won't hold if ice cracks furniture you stand on. "We move civilians south to Queen's Crown," Jon answered. "We hold a mobile defense. Fall back, burn ground behind us." Ed raised tired eyes. "Plan sounds like dying slower. Still, slower's better than swift." They set to work. Fires glowed in forges through the night, sparks spiraling into the polar sky. Jon worked alongside brothers, pounding dragonglass edges against iron. Sweat froze on his brow, forming a glaze. Each hammer strike rang like an oath. "Hold." Cassana Baratheon paced Storm's End's strategy chamber, tracing Jon's route on a frost-rimmed map. Reports from the north came sporadically, ravens blown off course. One message described shifting lakes, another forging of dragonglass. The last arrived torn, ink smudged by melted snow, only 3 words decipherable: "Ice moves beneath." She pressed fingers to the parchment until they numbed. Gendry burst in, face ashen. "Scouts from Kingswood report Queen's fleet sailing east. 30 galleys under dragon banners. Looks like they aim for the Rainwood, maybe Betcher Bridge." "Or for us," Cassana murmured. She straightened. "How long until they round the cape?" "A day with fair wind. 2 if storm." He glanced out narrow window where clouds bruised the horizon purple. "Storms brewing," Cassana exhaled. "Have maesters shelter refugees in lower caverns. Move grain to sea towers undercellar. Brienne takes command of outer walls. And you?" Gendry's tone held steel. "I ride to Betcher Bridge," she said. "If Daenerys crosses, we talk before arrows fly." Gendry's nostrils flared. "You'll talk to dragons?" "I'll talk to the woman who commands them." Cassana gripped her war helm. "Storm's End cannot stand alone against Drogon's flame. But perhaps it need not burn at all." She rode out an hour later with a retinue of 50. Valerion Marines, Stormlander Knights, 3 Dornish Scorpion crews on wagon beds. Rain slanted diagonal, sleet stinging. Lightning flickered over the canopy of the Rainwood. The road turned to muck. Horses floundered. Yet by dusk they reached Betcher Bridge. Stone arches spanning the shipbreakers' rush where froth roared white. On the far bank campfires glittered, unsullied encampment disciplined geometry. Dragons did not appear, but their absence hummed tension. A single banner rose at the riverfront, red 3-headed dragon on black. Cassana rode to midpoint of bridge under flag of truce, accompanied by Brienne. Rain drummed their helms. Facing them across the slick stones marched Grey Worm, helmless, eyes unreadable. He spoke Valyrian. Tyrion Lannister translated from his place at the eunuch's right. "The queen comes at dawn. She parleys once. If knee bends, Storm's End feeds the realm under her reign. If knee refuses, dragon cleanses rebellion." Cassana lifted her visor. "Storm's End feeds the realm already because the realm starves." Water streamed down her cheeks. "Tell your queen rebellion is not the wolf and stag united. It is ashes that refuse to blow away." Tyrion's gaze flickered with something like regret. Grey Worm said no more, offered parchment. Terms of surrender. Cassana accepted, but instead of unfurling, she folded it and slid under cloak. "Tomorrow," she saluted, wheeled her mare. Back at camp, she gathered captains round a guttering brazier. "We hold bridge until dawn. No arrows fired unless attacked. If the queen talks, we talk. If she brings dragon fire." Cassana glanced at the Dornish Scorpion crews, their bolts tipped with black iron barbs. "We show teeth." Valerion captain stroked gray beard. "Spears paw ground, my lady. Soldiers starve for answers." Cassana met their eyes. "The realm fractures because each man sees only his own fires. We must be sight for the blind. Hold lines. If dawn breaks red, stags and wolves will not be first to draw blood." Dawn broke red. Clouds tore apart in ragged scarlet tatters, sun bleeding upward. Across the shipbreakers' rush, unsullied ranks stood shield to shield. At their fore, Daenerys Targaryen in riding leathers the hue of wet coal. Drogon's shadow eclipsed cliff tops behind her as the dragon clung to a ledge, scales shimmering ember black. Cassana rode midway alone, visor up. She felt the heat pouring from the dragon even at this distance. like a forge door opened to the heart of a volcano. Daenerys's voice carried above roar of water. I offer life, bend and live, defy and burn. Cassana did not raise shield, did not lower knee. A queen who frees slaves should not burn those who bend only to feed their children. I am not here for your counsel, Daenerys replied. Kneel. Behind Cassana, thunder rumbled.
No oves.
She dared a glance. Dust plume along the western ridge. Riders approached fast. Spears tipped with sun emblem Dorne. At their head rode Lyanna Mormont astride a shaggy Garen, bearing a white flag slashed with green bear. She halted at Cassana's flank. The south stands with Storm's End, Lyanna shouted across river. Burn us and you burn those who fought beside dragons at Winterfell. A murmur rippled through unsullied ranks. Daenerys' stare narrowed. Drogon let out a low rumble that shook loose stones into the river. Cassana's heart hammered. She raised her voice. Queen of Dragons, I do not deny your claim. I deny only the thought that claim must be paid for in ash. Join with us to end winter's terror in the north. When dead are silent, let lords gather in council of all 7 kingdoms, including you, and choose the crown that will not crack. Daenerys' gaze flicked to Tyrion. The hand stepped forward. Your grace, he murmured. Compromise might bind wounds that wildfire could never cauterize. For an eternal heartbeat, silence. Then Drogon opened jaws. Flame licked across razor teeth, but he did not spew. Daenerys lifted a hand. The dragon stilled. You would tie my fire with threads of debate, the queen said. Yet threads may spin webs stronger than flame. She swung down from her white horse. Rain pattered hilts and pauldrons. Stepping to river edge, Daenerys extended a hand palm upward. Swear to council, swear to grain convoys, and Storm's End keeps its walls. Cassana dismounted too, boots splashing. She approached, each heartbeat loud. Overhead Drogon watched, great eye reflecting the rushing water. Cassana's thoughts crashed. Jon, frost pools, the walls pulse, the charred boy's wooden knight. She stopped 2 paces away and placed her gauntlet in the queen's bare palm. I swear, she said, voice hoarse, on antler and fong. Daenerys' grip was warm as a forge brick. Then let the realm witness. Behind them horns blew, Stormlander, Dornish, unsullied. The morning seemed to exhale tension. Drogon folded wings, smoke curling from nostrils, but eyes remained wary, gold within red. Tyrion stepped forward with inkstone and parchment. Signatures, he said almost giddily, quill trembling in his hand. History loves ink. That night in Storm's End's great hall, banners of wolfstag and dragon hung side by side for the first time. Refugees stared wide-eyed as Unsullied patrolled politely. Dornish spearmen shared flasks with Stormland archers. Musicians plucked storm harps for a melody awkward but hopeful. Daenerys sat at the high table beside Cassana, a gulf of careful courtesy between them. Mid-meal, a raven hammered wings against the hall doors. Sworn shields ushered the bird to Cassana. The note bore Jon's cramped script. Ice breaches. New whites, scaled, winged, birthed of lake vents. We hold but numbers swell. Send all dragonglass south has. And a dragon if queen willing. Walls will not last months, perhaps not weeks. Cassana felt blood drain from her cheeks. She handed note to Tyrion. The imp's face grayed. Daenerys read, lips tightening. Silence rippled down tables as word spread. The queen rose. My dragon rides north. She turned to Cassana. Will you ride with me? Cassana stood. Yes. Tyrion blurted. But the treaty burns if the realm freezes. Daenerys snapped. She pointed toward door. Prepare. Cassana felt relief flood. Terrible, exhilarating. I'll ready my shield, she said. That night, under torchlight, Cassana donned fur-lined armor, antler crest helm. Daenerys approached leading 2 great horses. Drogon carries few. We ride first to Winterfell, then north. She handed Cassana reins of a black warmare. You trust me? Cassana met her violet gaze. I trust the forge of desperate souls. Daenerys inclined her head. Then let dawn find us in the sky. Dawn's light saw Jon Snow atop the southern inner rampart of Castle Black, eyes raw red. Night had been a blur of screams and blue fire. New whites had come, creatures of bone and ragged membrane, half-formed wings sprouting along arms, their claws sharper than obsidian. They climbed the wall's half-collapsed ice like lizards on glass. Dragonglass arrows fell dozens, wildfire bombs dozens more, yet still they rose. By morning, 30 brothers lay dead. 6 did not stay dead, forcing kin to burn kin. Jon had not slept. He stood over pyres, watching fire churn gold and green until dawn. Now as sun cracked horizon, he spotted a dark speck southward. His heart lurched. At first he thought it haunting memory, but the speck grew, widening to silhouette, dragon wings beating. Behind it, smaller shapes, riders. A roar split the brittle air. Brothers raised eyes. Some gasped, some cursed, none cheered. Drogon swept above the wall, trailing embers. Jon shielded face from wind blast as the beast banked, claws gouging rampart. Daenerys leapt down, cloak snapping. Cassana dismounted after, shield on arm, eyes burning with urgency. Snow swirled in their hair. Jon's breath caught. For a heartbeat war and death fell away. He strode Orth. She met him halfway, wet snow crunching under step, and they clasped gauntlet hands wordless, letting eyes speak. Daenerys scanned the shattered ice expanse. Where? Jon pointed beyond the lake ridge.
Von Est.
We strike midday. They hide in daylight but burrow. He looked at Drogon, at Daenerys. Your fire may close fissures. Then fire they'll have. She mounted with effortless grace. Jon turned to Cassana. I feared I'd never see you again. You promised breathing, she said, touching his cheek. I promised dawn. He brushed snow from her brow. And dawn came on dragon wings. A horn sounded 3 blasts. Every head turned. From the north, a line of figures emerged, silhouettes against ice fog. At first, Jon's heart plunged, dead. But the figures carried blazing torches, living. At their heads strode a tall shape draped in weirwood bark cloak. Bran Stark, the 3-eyed raven, eyes glazed white as if seeing worlds stacked. He halted before Jon, voice dreamsoft. The wall cracks at seams older than stone. Close the vents, brother, and we may see spring. Jon nodded. We ride. Tormund bounded up, snorting steam. Finally dragons sided proper. Let's kill monsters before they hatch. They formed war lines, unsullied atop the wall behind scorpions, free folk archers flanking. Drogon took to air, Daenerys on his back hurling Valyrian commands. Jon, Cassana, Tormund, and Ghost led ground charge to the closest lake vent. The plain shimmered under pale sun, vent mouth smoking. From one fissure erupted a winged white, icicle fangs, frost-webbed wings too small for flight. Arrows streaked, dragonglass pierced, creature writhed. Cassana's spear finished it, puncturing spine. She yanked free, spun to guard Jon's flank. Drogon roared overhead, torrent of flame stabbing vent center. Ice exploded to steam, water boiled. Fissure walls drooped molten. Whites inside screeched as heat overwhelmed necromancy.
Jon signaled wildfire jars boom. Boom.
Shockwaves trembling through his ribs. But new vents split open beyond. Hiss of steam accompanied by chittering swarm of ice spiders. Cassana hurled torch into slick path, lighting oil spread by rangers. Firewall blazed. Spiders shriveled. Battle blurred into cascade of heat and frost. Drogon wheeled, spewing. Unsullied scorpions twanged. Free folk axes shattered brittle limbs. Yet for every vent sealed 2 fissures birthed cracks. Ice beneath boots pulsated like drumskin. From the ridge Bran watched with sightless eyes. Then his voice echoed through snow, amplified by some unseen current. Heart of frost yet beats below. Strike center. Jon understood, icy heart under the central lake. He waved to Daenerys. Drogon banked. Jon and Cassana sprinted across cracked flows, ghost leaping chasms. The lake's heart vent yawned, broad as Winterfell's great hall, water swirling black. Jon drew Longclaw, Cassana readied shield. Tormund, Ed, half-dozen others flanked. Whites burst from vent. Scaled, skeletal, hundreds. Jon slashed, Cassana battered, shield ringing, spear thrust crunching ribs of rime. Ghost dragged one by spine into abyss. Drogon descended low, wings fanning hurricane gusts. Daenerys shouted. Dragonfire poured, setting lake aflame green-gold as wildfire ignited surface. Steam geysered skyward, scalding. Jon felt heat sear his lashes yet pressed forward. Through flame he glimpsed something rising. A mass of jagged blue crystal shaped vaguely like a heart, the size of a farmer's cottage, embedded in ice. Within pulsed pale light, slow, monstrous. Cassana saw it too. Without words they moved. Jon hacked at ice crust with Valyrian steel. Cassana rammed spear's haft. Cracks spread, hairline to fist thick. Drogon's fire licked edges, melting, but crystal glowed brighter. Bran's voice drifted again. Dragonglass within the blood of fire. Jon realized. He reached to belt, drew Sansa's heirloom dagger, castle steel, no. He needed dragonglass. Cassana tugged pouch, produced a thin dagger carved from obsidian. She pressed it to his palm. Their eyes locked. "For the forge," she whispered. He nodded, raised the black blade high. At that moment the vent around them convulsed. Water surged, hurling whites, ice shards. Jon leapt onto jagged ledge and plunged dagger dead center into crystal. Light exploded, a radiance blinding white, then a thundercrack. Shockwave hurled Jon off his feet. He slammed onto ice, breath punched out. Flame whooshed overhead. He blinked spots, saw Cassana sprawled but moving. The crystal heart shuddered, fractured in a spiderweb of cracks. Blue luminescence sputtered, dimmed, went dark. Silence fell, unnatural, thick. Then, across the lake and beyond, whites collapsed mid-stride, limbs disjoining. Ice spiders crumbled to frost dust. Cracks ceased pulsing. The wall itself sighed, a noise like glacier calving. Drogon circled once, then alit near shore. Jon staggered to feet. Cassana stood, blood trickling from brow, eyes bright through grime. Ghost trotted up limping but tail high. Tormund hollered victory whoops. Jon and Cassana met at the ruined heart's edge. Steam obscured world, but not the warmth between them. He cupped her cheek, wiping blood with thumb. "Dawn," he breathed. She smiled weary, pressing forehead to his. "And forge holds." Behind them Daenerys approached, boots crunching. She studied the dormant heart, then Jon, then Cassana. Hope flickered in her violet eyes. Hope, perhaps, or acknowledgement. "The war of the dead ends," she declared, voice echoing off melted ice walls. "Now we forge life." Jon glanced south, imagining Storm's end banners beside dragon banners. Grain carts rumbling, children laughing free of cold. Future felt fragile but alive. He took Cassana's hand. Together they faced sunrise cresting the wall, its rays gilding ruined ice in molten gold. Clouds parted. The sun climbed, bright and warm on their faces. For the first time in what felt a lifetime, Jon Snow closed his eyes and let the light soak bone deep, as though breathing a promise none would dare break. Far south waves battered Storm's End, but in their spray children already chased gulls. Far north blackened pits cooled under calm sky. Between, across a realm scarred by ash and frost, bells would soon toll not for death but for harvest. And in the forge of hearts newly tempered by storm and ice, a house reforged beat strong, ready to live the peace it had bled to win. Ghost's paws left no imprint on the freshly fallen snow, as though the direwolf too had become a spirit in the wake of the frozen heart's destruction. Dawn spilled buttergold across the shattered lake, glazing every splintered shard of ice with opalescent fire. Jon Snow stood at the edge of the still steaming fissure, his damp hair matted against cheeks bitten raw by wind and furnace heat alike, feeling each breath slide down into lungs as sharp as broken glass. With every slow exhale he tasted iron, battle blood, dragon smoke, the metallic sting of magic unmade, and knew the day's fragile peace would last only until men chose the next war. Behind him, Castle Black's battered walls buzzed with new life. Brothers in black mingled with red-cloaked, unsullied, and hide-clad free folk, tying fresh dragonglass heads to ashwood shafts, dousing charred barricades, hauling ice-caked corpses toward the funeral trench beyond the ruined stables. Daenerys's dragon crouched upon the western parapet like a mountain of obsidian muscle, wings shivering each time the beast tasted the sky for lingering sense of death. Steam still coiled from cracks in the wall's base, but the pulse that had throbbed beneath the ice lay silent, and the water at the vent mouth now cooled in one sunlight like steel removed from the forge. Cassana Baratheon picked her way across buckled flows toward Jon, helm tucked beneath one arm, stag-tined cloak fluttering. A shallow gash traced her temple, tiny, already dark with drying blood yet stubbornly yielding fresh drops whenever her brows furrowed. Jon reached out without thinking and brushed a thumb across the wound. She flinched only at his touch, not at pain, and let her eyes track the line of melted lake out toward the blue horizon. If the heart was root to their resurrection, she murmured, why does dread weigh heavier now that it's gone? Jon followed her gaze. Beyond the lake, knotty pines stooped in defeated rows, their branches sagging under burden of white. Because when an enemy dies, he said at last, it leaves you face to face with the ruin that remains, and the ruin inside yourself. A gust dragged through his hair. He shoved the damp strands back. I do not know what tomorrow asks, only that it will not wait on our wounds to close. Cassana tipped her head, studying the fissure. A fractured sliver of ice drifted on the water, its edges glimmering like cut crystal. Tomorrow asks we choose what fills the void. Fear carves hollows in the hearts of men. We decide if hope or hunger flows in. She released a breath, white against morning. And hope needs hammering often as steel. Jon glanced toward Castle Black. Bran perched near the first-floor sally port upon a sled fashioned by blacksmiths overnight, ravens cawing in patient circle above his hood. Grey Worm drilled a double line of Unsullied within the small bowl south of the armory. The slap of spear hafts striking shields carried crisp and certain through empty air. Tormund roasted a goat on a spit jammed into snow, back already to the next battle as though yesterday's horrors were a child's tale by the hearth. The world turned, indifferent. We decide then, Jon said. We've left Storm's End unguarded. Refugees fill her yards, Dornish spears camp against her walls. A storm of tongues may shred peace quicker than a dragon's flame. Cassana's mouth curved, almost a smile, almost exhaustion. Gendry will hammer dissent flatter than shield bosses. Her gaze softened. But I will ride south soon. Stags cannot roost in snow forever. The rainwood waits. The thought of her away again tugged something deep. He tightened fingers on Longclaw's hilt. Not until we know these lakes sleep for good. A shriek sliced the air. Both whirled. Above, a raven tumbled feather over feather, one wing singed. Drogon snapped at it lazily, steam puffing from slitted nostrils. The raven steadied, soared out of reach, flapping ragged toward the gloom beyond the wall. Jon's pulse ticked faster. Bran's blank gaze followed bird and dragon alike. Ravens still vanish, Bran said when Jon reached him. The farther north they fly, the thinner the sky becomes. His eyes, all pupil, reflected no dawn. Where the sky thins, old doors groan. Jon knelt by the sled's edge. Are those doors now closed? For a time. Bran's voice drifted like breeze plucking harpstrings no one strummed. But time is tape. Fold it, and places far apart meet. He blinked, sight coming back to present. You break one lock, another rusted bolt might give way. A chill traced Jon's spine. Cassana stooped behind him, listening. Can you see what hides behind those bolts? She asked. I see only choices, Bran whispered. People pin their shapes onto the cloth of futures. The cloth shifts with every pin. He looked at Jon, old brother, new king, quiet intensity glowing. Choose where the next pin belongs before someone else drives it through your hand. Jon rose. First pin is bread. Second is shelter. Third is swords that stay in scabbards. He raked hair back again. We return to Storm's End together. Daenerys arrived beside Drogon's foreleg, scale-stitched black riding coat whipping about her ankles like a living thing. Soot still smudged her cheekbones. Eyes glittered amethyst. "The wall stands," she said simply. "Time kneels." She swept gaze over the ruin. "We have weeks, perhaps, before spring thaw sends fresh cracks through this ice again. If my dragon's fire fails then, dragon glass will not be enough." "We cannot freeze time," Jon replied, "so we build before it moves." He studied her expression, some mingling of triumph and grief and iron-fed determination. "Help the North plant seeds that survive cold or burnt field. Then the realm may learn to feed itself without bleeding neighbors." Daenerys's brows knit. "We will sow. Yet King's Landing festers. A broken city rots the land around it." She lifted chin. "I fly south with Drogon. I will not rest while cinders choke my people." "No single ruler mends the world alone," Cassandra interjected. "Councils do what crowns cannot." She nodded toward Bran. "His bark shelters many leaves." Daenerys's lips parted, protest half-born. Then she exhaled, the warm plume swirling frost between them. "I open my counsels to voices from North and Stormlands both. Come, join them." Jon felt weight shift, axes and antlers sliding across an invisible scale. "Soon," he promised. "Let us first bury our dead." They burned the fallen at dusk. Black brothers, free folk raiders, Dornish spearmen pierced by frost talons, unsullied slain where no master's lash could reach them. Pyres dotted the frozen plains south of the wall, each bonfire a beacon for ghosts. Snowflakes drifted overhead, catching fireglow, becoming embers as they fell. Jon lit the first stack with a pitch-soaked branch. Cassandra lit the second. Bran muttered prayers older than faith beneath breath. Daenerys pressed hand over her heart and whispered Valyrian words that quavered like broken harp strings. Tormund sang a bawdy dirge about wives waiting in warm caves. Ed muttered that ghosts seldom fancy love songs but might accept subpar company. When the flames settled to steady roar, Jon stepped away. Cassandra followed, ghost padding silent at their heels. They walked until pyre heat thinned to memory. Above, aurora ribbons unfurled, veins of green and violet shimmering like bruises across sky. Jon clasped her gauntlet. "Moment's peace," he said softly. "Borrowed," she answered, sliding fingers between his. "Then we pay it back." He watched breath ghost between them, mingling before wind snared it. They stood in silence until shouts rose behind. Brienne announcing arrival of supply wagons from Winterfell, Manderley flags snapping brisk. Duty resumed like a drumbeat that never misses the next strike. Winterfell's grain trains reached Castle Black the next day. 5 broad-wheeled wagons escorted by Karstark cavalry, each heaped with oat kernels, salted goat, root vegetables winter-stored in tubs of sawdust. Sansa Stark sent a letter embroidered with direwolf seal in red thread. The North stands. Feed the watch, tend the wounded, and remember spring seldom blooms without pruning that which withered. Beneath, she scrawled, "Tell Jon the world must choose new roots." Jon folded the parchment, felt its weight heavier than wax. Food bolstered morale, but more arrived, news casks brimming rumors. In the Riverlands, Ser Galladon Stonetree crowned himself Ward King of Harrenharrow after his Sellsword company butchered knights sworn to the once loyal Trant. At Riverrun, Edmure Tully brokered shipments of amber grain by promising to seat his newborn son on a future council of kingdoms. In the Vale, Lord Rabar Royce fortified the Bloody Gate and refused Queen Daenerys' envoy's passage. The realm frayed, threads unraveling even as new stitching tried to bind. Jon convened council in the stone-ward hall beneath shattered rafters. Daenerys, Cassandra, Bran, Tormund, Davos. New faces from every point of a wheel missing spokes. "We need a seat unburned, central, defensible," Davos said. "Someplace lords may gather without sword drawn." He glanced at Bran. "The Isle of Faces, perhaps?" Bran's lips thinned. "Old gods watch, not speak." Green men neither host nor bargain, and waters drown quickly. Daenerys unfurled a map upon the long oaken table. Dragonstone stands, she said, and King's Landing will be rebuilt. But if lords fear charred walls, they will not come. Cassana tapped Storm's End. Shelter found them within ring of stone. Stag and wolf banners promise neutrality between ice and fire. Jon considered. Storm's End may host provisional council. We gather riverlords, Dornish, Reach bannermen, Vale, Ironborn if they choose new pledge. He eyed Daenerys. But the queen must walk through a gate not her own. That gesture wields more power than armies. Daenerys's jaw tightened. Flames reflected in her violet eyes. At last she nodded once, short, decisive. I will come. 2 days later riders set south. Grey Worm's spearpoint guard, Dornish outriders bearing Desert Sun. Free folk contingent led by Tormund, though he swore no floors built south fit his step. Bran traveled by raven-drawn sled across frozen bar Rolands. Daenerys soared ahead upon Drogon, wings carving swirling contrails through dawn haze. Jon and Cassana rode side by side, wrapped in furs, Ghost loping ahead like a harbinger of storms. The march felt both pilgrimage and exodus. Villages along the King's Road spilled small folk into snowy ditches to watch the dragon overhead. Some knelt, some crossed arms in dread, more simply stared blank. Jon dismounted in each settlement, speaking with farmers, leaving sacks of oats, promising patrols to keep bandits away. Cassana listened, committing faces to memory, asking names of children. Rumors of Wolfstag alliance spread faster than horse hooves could outrun. At Queen's Crown they paused to resupply. Sansa met them there, cloaked in emerald wool. She embraced Jon in private, whispering caution about the Vale's new intractability. She greeted Cassana with a measured smile, equal parts relief and curiosity. That night they dined in the old tower where Bran once hid from the world. Venison stew, turnip mash, mulled wine spiced with cinnamon. Snow hammered the windows like restless ghosts, but inside the hearth roared bright. Sansa pulled Jon aside after the meal. Your alliance with the Targaryen queen, she murmured, places you between fire and ash again. I walk there willingly, Jon answered. One false step plunges you. She touched his arm. She carries both justice and vengeance like twin swords. Only one sheath exists. Jon met her blue-gray gaze. I know. Sansa searched his face for a moment. Then she smiled, soft, sad. Just find a way to stand on a sword's edge without bleeding, little brother. She turned to help Cassana review supply ledgers, leaving Jon with the echo of her caution. Across leagues of icy plains, the Isle of Tears long held by no crown now cracked at its foundations. In cryptic visions Bran later recounted, quartz pillars beneath the islet glowed with frostlight, as though something stirred far deeper than lakes. But these portents remained whispers, for now the living looked south. Storm's End seldom slept before a storm. On the night the dragon banners crested shipbreakers rushed the castle's wind-worn stones thrummed like a drumhead. Cassana rode through the gates first to reassure the refugees. Children chased her horse, waving scraps of cloth dyed gray and gold. She dismounted, clasped a girl's soot-smudged hand, promised bread by dawn. Daenerys landed beyond the outer ward, thick air rippling from Drogon's wings. Panic flashed in the eyes of Stormlanders before they beheld Unsullied forming a calm corridor. The queen slid from saddle, letting onlookers see her with sword unbelted, armor bared to salt spray. Murmurs followed like fluttering birds. Inside the Rain Tower's round hall, high table expanded with fresh planks to seat new voices. Gendry at Cassana's right, Davos one seat over, Rabar Royce, gaunt under silver helm, Edmure Tully, cheeks flushed from coastal chill, Prince Corn Martell's niece Lady Melora, fiery curls bound beneath copper deity. Lord Stonetree's envoy wary, iron bank riders in dull gray, eyes glittering coin. Jon stood at the far end. Bran's sled rested near the hearth, ravens perched in silent watch. Sansa occupied the seat left of Bran, Quill poised above vellum ledger to record every word. Lyanna Mormont clambered onto high-backed chair opposite, booted feet dangling but presence somehow towering. Silence stretched until Bran spoke. The realm breathes still, but each breath grows shallow. We choose now whether to heal or watch lungs collapse. Daenerys rose. No crown rested upon her braid. The dead have been beaten for a time by union of fire and ice. Her gaze swept the tables. Let this hall prove men need not fear the dragon if they feed the same flame. She extended a hand toward Cassana. Lady Baratheon forged saving blows with spear and shield. Let Storm's End host a council shaping peace zone by such iron. Cassana stood. Storm's End stands open, and as storms break, so too may grudges. Gendry hammered fist to chestplate. A metallic gong filled hall. Edmure cleared his throat. The Riverlands will contribute grain to any levy feeding Crownlands orphans and the burnt. Lady Malora tilted chin. Dorne commits olives and citrus, taste of sun for long winters. But we demand voice unshackled by north or south. Rabar Royce's deep voice followed. The Vale honors kneecap oath to House Stark. Yet we hold our heights until Dragonfire swears no scorching of airy cliffs. Jon stepped forward, long claw at back yet unsheathed. Dragons will not darken your gates unbidden. He turned to Stonetree envoy. And Sel's words who crown themselves must answer to swords of every true house. Lay down false titles and find a seat. The envoy hesitated, swallowed, nodded stiffly. Iron Bank captain, quill behind ear, leaned forward. All this mending requires coin. The bank extends credit at generous rates if secured by Storm's End's deep water port tariffs. Gendry barked low laugh. Generous to whom? Cassana raised palm. We repay by timber rights, not tariffs extracted from hungry bellies. She locked eyes with the Bravosi. Stormlands yields forests plenty. The captain considered. Timber plus interest scaled to harvest. Quill scratched. Acceptable. Sansa's quill skated across parchment capturing offers, demands. Bran's gaze drifted wraith-like. The council debated long into night. Tax corridors, patrol rotations, salvage rights at Blackwater's scorched docks. Voices rose, fell, rose again. Yet not once did steel leave scabbards. When oil lanterns guttered low, Bran spoke once more. Threads twist, choose anchor. He nodded to Jon and Cassana. A child of ice and storm may bind cloth no dagger can sever. Silence rippled outward. Jon felt blood rush ears. Cassana's fingertips on the table tensed, knuckles whitening. Daenerys watched, expression unreadable. Lyanna broke tension with snort. Plenty of time for swaddling later. First build a cradle that doesn't burn down come next dragon sneeze. Laughter gingerly threaded the hall. Cassana exhaled. Jon caught her eye, mixture of fond exasperation and simmering hope. In ensuing weeks, Storm's End thrummed like a smithy. Dornish masons repaired salt-eaten buttresses. Manderley carpenters raised new warehouses on pilings washed by tides. Free folk fishers taught Stormlander lads net casts for silverbelly smelt. Refugees found trade inside new markets. Evenings hummed with hawkers selling barley cakes. Amber-beaded jewelry carved from WIRM bones, Tarth sea glass trinkets. Jon oversaw joint patrol drills. Vale knights practicing shield walls beside unsullied phalanx. Karstark archers sharing railings with Dornish crossbowmen. When one hot-blooded reachman slurred a free folk mother's accent, Lyanna Mormont boxed the knight's ear herself. No more slurs followed. Daenerys dedicated mornings to rebuilding King's Landing from afar, dispatching architects, masons, funds. Yet each dusk she walked Storm's End ramparts with Jon, Cassana, and Bran, discussing sewage channels, orphanages, systems grander than thrones. The queen's laughter grew easier, though fire never left her eyes. Ghost-guarded gatehouses at night. The direwolf's presence calmed those still flinching at dragon roars. Some children giggled when his snowy head nudged boots for scraps. One afternoon Sansa found Cassana atop sea tower, ledger in lap, sketching new banners. Wolf devouring flame but bleeding golden antlers. a warning that every beast needs restraint lest it burn itself. Sansa sat, smoothing winter cloak. Jon will lead this council only if the world stands behind him, Sansa said. Cassana dipped quill, eyes fixed on parchment. He leads when he'd rather rest. Perhaps that is leadership. Wearing an unwanted crown lightly enough to hand it off if someone better appears. And if no one better does? Then those who love him brace the weight. Cassana looked up. That includes you, sister of his heart. Sansa smiled faintly. I will hammer rivets till crown sits steady. Wind whipped red hair across her vision. But storms brew still. Have you heard Ironborn whispers? Cassana shook head. Euron Greyjoy's nephew Victarion rides tidal currents again, Sansa said. He claims dragons bleed too. Her voice dipped like a cold seabird diving for fish. Men who chase dragons seldom mind sinking the realm beneath them. Cassana folded banner sketch. We'll watch waves. That night horns brayed thrice along cliffside. Approach from sea. Jon reached parapet to find Manderley lookouts staring at the horizon. Moonlight caught sails. Serrated, black, emblazoned with kraken. 3 longships skimmed surf, oars ghost silent, heading north along coast. Gendry cursed. Reavers scoping for weak coves. Jon narrowed eyes. Perhaps scouts before full raid. Assemble rangers. Cassana appeared, cloak half-buckled, hair loose. Let them pass, she suggested. Let them, Gendry barked. They seek cracks, she said. Show none. She pointed to watchfires, massive braziers newly positioned. Light every brazier, beat every drum. Make storm's end blaze like beacon. Let them see no darkness to hide in. Jon considered, then signaled. Torchbearers ignited pitch-soaked towers. Drummers thundered rhythms across ramparts. On the sea the longships slowed, oars feathering. Minutes stretched. Then, as if struck by sudden oath, the vessels veered seaward, slipping back into night. Jon exhaled. Cassana's shoulders sagged, relief visible. Storm's end stands, she said softly. He rested palm on her shoulder. Thanks to its storm, weeks melted into months. Spring teased with amber sunsets, fat buds on wind-gnarled branches. Yet ravens carried fresh tremors. Edric Dane besieged by Sellswords near Blackmont. Snowmelt floods ravaging barley fields outside Highgarden. Iron Bank envoys vanishing on the Gold Road. Each brought council sessions deep into the night. One evening Daenerys requested private council with Jon and Cassana. In the chamber high above surf she unfurled soot-black parchment bearing crimson wax. Unknown seal. Tokero the Red, she said, voice taut. A Lysine fire mage. He claims fragments of the Night King's ice heart drifted into Shivering Sea, gathering followers among fisherfolk who worship frozen demons. He begs my aid before a new cult seeds in Essos. Jon rubbed temple. Ice across narrow sea. Fire mages chasing shards of dark magic. Our hands already full. Yet darkness roots and cracks, no matter how narrow, Daenerys countered. Violet gaze met his. Leave with me at first tide. We quell sparks before they blaze. Cassana listened, unmoving. Jon's jaw clenched. I cannot abandon this council now. Cassana spoke then, calm. I will sail in his stead. Both turned to her. The world trusts unity, she explained. Wolf and stag parted. Perhaps dragons bite. She offered half-smile. But stag and dragon may hunt across seas while wolf guards hearth. She rested hand on Jon's arm. Storm's end stands tall. What shakes it will shake me too. Jon's protest caught inside chest. Daenerys watched the exchange, eyes softening. A Baratheon bearing Stark pledge may open doors Northern steel cannot. I accept. Jon gazed at Cassana long. Seasons traveled between them in a moment. At last he inhaled. Return, he whispered. Before ghosts forget your scent. I will, she answered. The night before departure, they walked the Rainwood's edge, moonlight slanting through tangled oaks. Cassana led him to a hollow where orange blossom bushes, planted from seedlings she'd ordered months ago, now budded pale gold. He touched one fragile bloom. "When I first smelled this on you," he said, voice thick, "I felt spring even as snow fell. I wear it to remind myself storm's birth blossoms." She removed a small vial from cloak, pressed it into his hand. "For when winter whispers louder than memory." Jon closed fist around glass. He bent, kissed her with salt on lips, sea and sweat and something sweeter. "May the narrow sea shrink between each heartbeat until you stand beside me again." Cassana's eyes shone. "And may your forge never cool." They parted at dawn as Drogon's shadow rolled across courtyard. Daenerys mounted first. Cassana swung up behind unsaddled ridges, fingers curling beneath obsidian scale. The dragon leapt, wings carving thunder. Spray leapt off sea tower walls, glittering. Jon watched until they vanished east, silhouette swallowed by rising sun. Ghost whined at his flank. He rested palm on the direwolf's head. "Hope hitches itself to wings," he murmured. "We guard what ground remains." Months passed. Rhoynar winds warmed seas, crocuses poked between shattered stones of King's Landing. Wildfires replaced by newly paved streets lined with saplings imported from summer isles. Reports arrived of Cassana and Daenerys in Lys. Cult altars broken, ice relics melted beneath dragon flame, but Mage Tokero fled north over Valyrian waters. Every raven scribbled Cassana's health, her spear tip red with victory, yet never lingering lines of personal note. Jon reread each message until ink smudged edges smooth as worry stones. Meanwhile, Storm's End's Grand Council labored, establishing a grain commons, pooled harvest shared across famine pockets. Scribes drafting free ports accord allowing any ship safe entry so long as cargo included food or medicine. Agreement to resurrect the ancient order of the Night's Watch as a multi-kingdom garrison with lords each sending sworn youths for 2-year tours rather than life vows. Some balked, some bargained, but each small win stitched another seam in realm's ragged cloak. Sansa oversaw adoption of the She-Bear Edict, expanding inheritance rights to daughters. Lyanna toasted with blackberry mead until voice cracked. Gendry established quartermaster guild forging plowshares along with spear points. Bran whispered prophecy rarely, yet his presence loomed like sentinel tree. Still Jon felt a hollowness. Each dusk he walked the battlements, vile. A network error occurred. Please check your connection and try again. If this issue persists, please contact us through our help center at help.openai.com. Retry. Beneath a sky of hammered bronze, the waves around Skagos heaved and snarled, their foam stained murky teal by strange fathom light flickering beneath. Evening's last blush of color had barely surrendered when cold radiance burst through fissures in the churning sea, each pulse outlining jagged-toothed cliffs in a witchfire glow. Jon Snow saw it first from Northwatch Bluff, a lurid heartbeat throbbing deep below, matching the tempo of the shard Daenerys had sworn she and Cassana had destroyed. The Mage Tokero's trail had ended here, on this isle of cannibal myths and goat-haired legends. But the dead thing he served clearly breathed anew. Jon's gauntlets creaked as he tightened his grip on the spyglass. Next to him, Ghost growled low, hackles knitting frost. Farther up the slope, Dornish signal fires winked and unsullied horns groaned mournful warnings. Snow that should have melted 2 weeks past now feathered shoulders and helms alike. An unnatural cold filtered from the sea, the smell of brine tainted by iron so bitter it made tongues numb. Cassana's hand descended onto Jon's shoulder, grounding as always. "You feel it." He lowered the glass. Same pulse as the lake. Smaller perhaps, but hungrier. He turned, scanning the semicircle of encampments ringing Skagos' black beaches. Vale horsebows bivouacked under half-collapsed pines. Free folk tents stitched from mammoth hide. Karstark pikes bristling along a shale ridge. Daenerys' command pavilion bright with dragon banners just beyond the treeline. In 6 months, the realm's patchwork armies had learned one another's curses, flagged differences, stitched compromise. Now they met their first shared test of peace. Behind them, Bran Stark approached, sled pushed by 2 watch recruits. Ravens capered on antlered poles over his shoulders, cawing arguments with the wind. Bran's pupils lay swallowed in milky haze. When he spoke, voice came hollow. Doors rattle, shard drinks tide, spills magic as mist. Break it soon or sea will freeze from here to Bravos. Cassana exhaled, vapor curling. How deep? An undercave older than first men. Volcanic vents once warmed it. Now hearth turned to heart of ice. Daenerys strode up the ridge then, her steps sure despite storm-slick rock. Gulls shrieked overhead. Drogon circled, tail scything vapor trails. The mage is below, she announced without preamble. Grey Worm captured 3 villagers ferrying Sapphire Eye idols to him. They babbled about salt whites coming at moon's highest. Jon met her gaze. If Heart and Shard reunite, we face second war of dead, this time born beneath waves. He looked to Cassana. We cut early. She nodded. Tunnels carve this cliff like wormwood. Scouts found a passage wide enough for 2 abreast. Her eyes flicked to the distant sea glow. But rock there hums, cold hum. Steel may shatter. Dragonglass then, Daenerys said. And dragonfire, Jon added. We send 2 prongs. One from above with fire, one from within to drive Shard toward flame. Distant thunder rumbled, no drums on ironborn hulls. Sail shadows smeared the western horizon. Victarion Greyjoy had followed rumor of shards as if pulled by hook. Jon grimaced. And we have reavers at gate. Cassana's jaw set. Gendry and Valerion's hold straight. Let Kraken waste strength on kinslaying. She turned, already calling for captains. Night fell heavy as slate as the assault began. Snow shifted to sleet, each droplet hissing off Regal's green scales while the dragon wheeled low, scouting for rookeries along cliff face. On the beach, unsullied shields locked into an adamantine crescent. Behind them, Dornish and Reach archers crouched over kegs of pitch-soaked arrows. Jon led the breach team, 20 Watch Rangers, a dozen free folk berserkers eager to taste thrum of new war, 5 Karstark miners bearing picks whose heads glittered black with dragonglass edges. At his side, Cassana carried her wolfstag shield strapped tight against battered brigandine, spearhead freshly tipped with obsidian fangs. Ghost lingered nearest tunnel mouth, white coat an accusation against the darkness inside. They descended into guts of Skagos, a corridor of porous basalt streaked with quartz veins that glimmered faintly blue. With each step, the temperature plunged, breaths crystallized in mid-air. Water dripped in arrhythmic plinks that gradually merged into chords, vibrations deep enough to rattle sternums. The shards pulse. At a fork they paused. Jon touched the stone. A thin film of rime stuck to glove. Left slopes down. He motioned 2 scouts. Moments later, a horn sounded thrice above, echoing through stone. Ironborn landing. Cassana muttered a curse. We close this and run them between dragon and ice, Jon said. They pressed on. The tunnel widened abruptly into a cavern whose ceiling billowed like a frozen wave. In its center stood Tokero. He wore tattered scarlet robes flecked with salt crystals. Hair hung lank, eyes fever bright. In his arms he held the shard, paler now, shot through with thin tendrils of living frost. The mage's lips moved though no sound carried, and with each syllable rune-like sigils crawled across the ice in dull blue luminescence. Jon raised Longclaw. Stop! Tokero glanced up, almost bemused. Dragon's consort and Ice King's ghost approach, he whispered. His voice sounded as though dragged across gravel. Too late. I bleed the depths. Sleep stirs. Cassana strode forward, shield lifted. Hand over the shard and walk out breathing. The mage lifted a palm. Sheets of translucent ice erupted between them, snapping tall as trees. Free folk axes smashed 2 before the next rank rose thicker. Cold bit exposed skin. One ranger's beard froze solid mid-shout. Jon glimpsed movement beneath ice floor. Shapes like manatees but skeletal, swirling under thin crust. Salt whites ready to rise. Fire now! From the tunnel behind, miners hurled sealed clay urns. They shattered, releasing globs of wildfire that sizzled atop ice. Green flame roared, chewing walls. Steam blew pockets open. Ghost sprang through a fissure, jaws closing on Tokero's calf. Mage shrieked, shard tumbling. Cassana dove, sliding across melting slick, hands closing around the shard just as it cracked upon touchdown. A wave of psychic cold blasted outward, torches gutted, lungs seized. Jon felt his heart stutter, visions razored across mind. A wall of glass bursting sky-high, oceans boiling with white leviathans. He roared, lunging. Longclaw parted one of Tokero's arms at elbow. The mage collapsed amid shards of himself screaming prayer to gods of frost. But the main shard, now spider-webbed with fractures, pulsed frantic. Ice beneath exploded, salt whites breached, sloshing humanoid forms of brine and bone clawed at footing. Cassandra rammed her spear through one skull before its jaw could close on her greave. Brine hissed where it touched steel. Jon yelled for retreat back to choke tunnel. They fell back, Cassandra last, wolf-stag shield absorbing blows that rang hollow. Ghost worried a salt white's ankle, dragging it down to be pulverized by a ranger's hammer. Behind, Tokero's blood seeped into cracks. The shard drank it, glow brightening to near daylight. Jon saw only one end. Tunnel, he shouted. They reached a slender throat of stone. Cassandra thrust the shard into Jon's hands. Give her fire, she gasped, eyes shining with battle madness and terror both. I hold. She slammed shield edge into rock face, creating makeshift brace. Jon hesitated a heartbeat too long. Salt whites hammered into her shield. Ice quaked. Cassandra grunted, boots sliding. Go!
Jon spun, sprinting upward, shard clutched.
Brine dripped from it like sweat, freezing instantly. He emerged onto cliff shelf just as Drogon loomed overhead, belly scales lantern red. Wind from wings staggered him. Burn! Jon screamed, hurling the shard into air like a comet. Flame met crystal mid-arc. An explosion of turquoise brilliance so blinding the world vanished. When sight returned seconds later, he stood on scorched scree. The tunnel mouth had collapsed under fused obsidian and slag.
No wicked emerged.
No sound save surf. Cassandra? Jon lunged to rubble, clawed glowing stones. Heat blistered palms even through gauntlets. He dug until Gendry and free folk reinforcements pulled him back. Rock still molten, Gendry shouted. Jon shoved away, voice cracking. She's in there. Downslope ironborn warhorns braid. Victarion's troops clashed with Dornish on. Beach. Jon's world shrank to the furnace at his feet. He pounded once with blade pommel. Nothing. Then faint 3 metallic knocks answering from within. She lives. Jon roared. Axes, water, anything. Soldiers formed a bucket line from drifted snow. Others hammered edges, pried cooling chunks. Ghost pawed, whining. Minutes stretched molten slow until at last a crack split wide and Cassandra spilled out with a roar of steam, half crawling, shield glowing cherry. Jon caught her, both sinking to knees. She coughed, spitting brine, grime streaking face. That, she rasped, was warmth even North can't dream. He gathered her in arms, forehead to hers. For an instant battle noise, dragon roar, ocean fury fell away. You held, he whispered. I outstubborned ice, she replied, exhaustion weaving through words. Just barely. Drogon bellowed overhead, turning beach into furnace to scatter ironborn. Victarion's flagship tried to retreat. Regal's emerald flame seared its sails. The Kraken fleet broke, dissolving into flight. Tokero's corpse lay somewhere below sealed rock, his cult crushed. The shard melted to slag, swirling into furnace rivers that now hardened glass smooth. Bran later sealed vent mouths with weirwood resin, whispering runes older than tongues. Skago's campaign ended in victory, but at cost. 200 slain, dozens frostburned, Karstark deep miners buried unseen. The council declared a day of turning. Mourning for what had been, celebration for what might follow. The first realm-wide festival since pre-Robert days. Storm's End blossomed. Torches strung from parapets cast amber constellations. Archers mounted paper lanterns shaped like direwolves, stags, dragons. Dornish pipers jangled finger cymbals beside ironborn drummers now sworn to rebuild Blacktide farms they had once raided. Children chased lavender glow fireflies imported by Tyrell beekeepers. Bran watched from balcony, ravens perched in restful hush. In the Rain Tower's grand hall, Jon and Cassana stood before assembled lords. Gendry hammered a new circlet fashioned from melting shards of northern dragonglass and Stormlander star iron. No crown, but a simple band. He presented it to them both. "Forged from ice and storm," he said, voice unexpectedly gentle. "Neither iron for rule nor gold for vanity. A memory to remind our heir's fire is not the only light." Jon accepted, then turned to Cassana. "You wore flame within you before dragons borrowed heat. Wear this now, and let realm know its fire lives in more than breath of beasts." Her lips curved. "And you, ghost of winter, may finally accept that warmth does not melt you." She placed the band upon his brow. He settled second band upon hers. Cheers rose, Manderly bellowing, "Long live House Reforged." Lyanna Mormont howling like the bears of her isle. Daenerys stepped forward clad in dress the color of midnight tide. She raised chalice. "The dragon bows not to conquerors but to companions. May this house remind future thrones that strength binds only when willed by hearts." Jon lifted his cup. "And may those hearts hammer new justice each dawn." They drank. Horns sounded. Minstrels unleashed a reel so wild even Bran's lips twitched amusement. Jon guided Cassana to center floor. They moved slowly, battle-bruised bodies finding rhythm amid swirl of silks and clattering boots. She winced once, rib twinge, but laughed as he spun her beneath lantern glow. He breathed in orange blossom layered on wood smoke, on salt, on unbroken promise. "Tomorrow," she whispered, forehead to his, "we begin forging schools, roads, granaries, children perhaps." Jon's throat tightened with something deeper than windbite. "Tomorrow," her palm pressed to his chest. "But tonight, just dawn's embers." Outside, dragons arced through starlight, their shadows vast yet strangely gentle across sleeping waves. On far horizon the aurora danced again, but its colors softened. No dire omen, merely lights flaring bright over a world that had, at least for a season, chosen peace. Seasons rolled. Grain thrived in Riverland's fields unscorched by war. Dornish aqueducts carried water to parched march villages. Ironborn shipwrights built ferries for Valemen pilgrims. The Night's Watch Reforged established rotating garrisons at each Westerosi port to watch for ice remains that might drift south, turning watchmen into navigators of memory as much as border guards. Daenerys sailed east to broker alliances against shadow cults. Gendry managed shipyards forging both plow and prow. Sansa coordinated trade charters thick as Maester's ledgers. Bran dreamed across weirwood routes, murmuring whenever a rusted bolt in time loosened. And high in Storm's End, where sea spindrift kissed mullioned glass, Cassana Baratheon kneaded dough one quiet dawn, stomach rounding just enough to tilt her stance. Jon entered, hair ash-flecked from forge where he taught orphans smithcraft. He eyed her belly, all widening a smile across scars. She pressed flour-dusted fingers to his lips. "Not a word or the bread turns tough," she teased. "Then I'll speak to dough," he murmured, covering her hand with his. Outside gulls cried, wind rattled shutters, but peace endured in small acts. Bread rising, letters carrying promises across seas, children carrying wooden knights carved from driftwood rather than burned from homes. From the shore to the shivering sea, the tale of wolf and stag and dragon forging dawn passed hearth to hearth, reminding each listener that the world breaks, yes, but humans choose how to bind the fractures. Some with fire, some with frost, and some, together, with something harder than both, hammered in the space between, glowing steady long after the brightest flames die out. Thus Jon Snow, no longer bastard nor king but simply Reforger, and Cassana Baratheon, the stormbearer whose spear once held a cavern roof against death, walked into the years ahead shoulder to shoulder, each dawn a smithy where tomorrow's peace waited, glowing, to be shaped beneath their patient hands. Snowmelt pooled between the flagstones of Storm's End's inner ward, glimmering like quicksilver under a late summer moon. Jon Snow crossed the courtyard alone, boot heels splashing through the silence. The castle slept behind shuttered arrow slits, except for the rookery perched atop the Maester's tower, where restless ravens scraped claws across slate and muttered in their dark language of distant storms. 2 months had passed since Skagos, since the shard had burst in turquoise fire and Cassana had clawed her way from molten stone into his arms. 2 months of rebuilding, of tenuous peace, of sleepless nights spent listening for the creak of those fabled doors Bran warned might open again. Tonight the only sound was the slow cadence of Jon's breath, yet the air tasted wrong, copper sharp, like blood before it dries. He lowered his hand to Longclaw's pommel. A shadow detached from the colonnade beside the training yard, slim, hooded, moving with the fluid certainty of one who had practiced every footfall. Jon pivoted and the moon slid from behind a cloud, silvering the figure's drawn dagger. A whisper of steel rasped as Longclaw cleared its scabbard. "Yield," Jon commanded, voice low enough not to wake the garrison. "Or bleed." The intruder lunged silent, precise. Blade kissed mail at Jon's ribs. His sword parried, sparks leaping. They circled. Jon registered small details. Weapon of Bravosi make, handle wrapped in red silk. Steps light as a dancer's. Breath even, not the frantic pant of desperate cutthroats. Assassin, then, hired. For him, or for the child stirring within Cassana's womb upstairs. Rage flared like ember struck by wind. Jon feinted high, then hammered the flat of his blade against the assailant's wrist. Metal clanged onto stone. He grabbed the cloak, yanked. The hood fell. A woman stared back. Hair shaved on one side, the rest bound in top-knot braids. An intricate rune tattoo spiraled along her jaw. Valyrian glyphs symbolizing ember. Her eyes, though, glowed icy cyan, unnaturally luminous. White Walker eyes. Jon's stomach dropped. But the long night was ended, the heart destroyed. No wight had retained such cunning, such grace. Unless she hissed something in a thick Lysine accent and drove her knee toward his groin. He twisted, caught her elbow, and slammed her into the pillar. Stone rang, but she vanished. Another impossible movement. Reappearing behind him with a second dagger conjured from wrist sheath. He barely blocked. Blade skittered down longsword, cutting his forearm. Blood spattered. The assassin inhaled, tongue flicking. Tasting? She smiled, revealing small, filed points where canines should be. Jon's pulse thundered. He pressed forward, forcing her against a battered practice dummy. His fist met her jaw, bone cracked. Still she smiled, fingers caressing the wound like a lover's gift. Footsteps thundered. Torchlight flared. Gendry and 2 night guards barreled through the archway, maces raised. The assassin retreated 1 step, then 2, then darted for the cistern grate at Ward's edge. She slipped through iron slats as though smoke, vanishing into tunnels below. Jon cursed. Ghost bounded beside him, snarling down the hole. Gendry knelt. "You're bleeding." "Not deep." Jon pressed fingers to rent sleeve. Blood seeped between. He stared after the vanished woman. "Eyes like a white," he muttered. Then the dead learnt new tricks. Gendry hefted torch, peering into grate. "We'll flush every rat run from here to Rainwood." Jon wiped sweat. "And wake Cassana. She must know." Cassana found him in the council solar at dawn. Hair plaited but flyaways framing her freckled face. She wore no armor, only a loose wool robe that failed to hide the swell of 5 months' pregnancy. Yet her carriage was still commander straight, spear strapped across back, habit dying last. "You should rest," Jon murmured. "I will when our child arrives into a realm not hunted by ghosts." She moved to examine his bandaged arm. "Maester said poison won't take. Steel clean." "Wounds nothing," he answered. "It's her eyes." Cassana exhaled, gaze sliding to the open window where gulls wheeled above dawn-pink surf. Bran sent word midnight. He dreamed of rivers flowing backward, ice drifting south beneath the waterline where no sun melts. Said the shard's echo lingers in shards we never saw. Pieces scattered when the lake's heart broke, Jon recalled. He rubbed the scabbed gash. Tokero's cult retrieved more than one fragment. Cassana's palm brushed her belly. "And sells them dearly." Iron Bank agents captured a crate of frost hearts bound for Stepstone's markets, jewels cold enough to burn skin. She forced a thin smile. Winter as accessory. Jon's jaw clenched. Valyrian glyph on the assassin's face. Ember. Maybe a sect styling themselves burning embers, worshippers of both fire and ice. Fire mages turned half-white? Cassana shivered. It would explain her speed, blood of living, eyes of dead. A knock interrupted. Davos Seaworth entered, cloak stiff with sea salt. "Forgive, my lords." He handed a scroll, wax-bearing seahorse mark of Valerion. A fleet from Pentos sighted near Driftmark. Sails black as pitch, no banners. And reports of harbor waters icing despite summer currents. Jon's throat tightened. "They ferry those shards. We intercept before they reach Blackwater or Bravos." Cassana nodded. "I sail. You stay." His protest came swift. "If shards connect to me through whatever magic raised me, exactly why you stay?" she countered. "If they want king's blood, better not deliver it gift-wrapped." Her tone firm, but eyes soft. "Keep counsel whole." Ghost huffed as if agreeing. Davos cleared his throat. "Lady Cassana commands Seaworth's oath. Fastest hull west of Volantis. We load dragonglass scorpions by noon." Jon clasped Cassana's forearm. "Return breathing." She smiled faintly. "Forge bright." The Pentoshi galleon loomed at sunset 3 days later, masts thick with frozen rime despite balmy wind. Cassana watched from Seaworth's oath's prow, spyglass trained. Shapes scurried upon enemy deck, figures wrapped in crimson robes, hauling chests clamped with iron. The water around Hull crackled with thin ice film that melted yards behind, leaving milky wake. Beside her, Davos muttered every seafaring prayer he knew. "Hard to port," Cassana ordered. Sailors hauled lines. Canvas billowed. The oath swept alongside galleon starboard, cropping distance to arrowshot. Stormlander archers loosed flaming shafts tipped in obsidian. Bolts thudded rails, shattering frost crust. Ice hissed to vapor. A crimson mage atop forecastle flicked wrists. Shards of blue shot skyward, coalesced into jagged spear. It harpooned the sea, flash freezing a corridor of water beneath Oath's beam, locking hull mid-turn. "Catapults!" Davos roared. Cassana dashed aft. She grabbed lever. Counterweight dropped, hurling a clay pot of wildfire across ice channel. It burst, green inferno racing along frozen film, devouring path. Ice snapped, brittle shards flinging seawater geysers. The oath freed, listing. But Pentoshi mage hurled second spear, straight toward Cassana. Time slowed. She braced shield, wolf stag sigil scarred but unbowed.
Spier met steel, erupted in roiling frost.
Impact hurled her across deck. She struck rail, world lurching. Sound dimmed, replaced by muffled pulse echoing unborn child's heart. Hands lifted her. Davos, his eyes wide but calm. "Can you stand, my lady?" She rose, teeth rattling but grip steady. Frost spread across shield face, devouring paint. She unstrapped it, flung it overboard. Shield sank, dragging frost with it. Her belly cramped, sharp but passing. She inhaled slow until pain dulled. "End this," she hissed. Crow's nests on oath ignited flares. Regal answered, plummeting from storm clouds like emerald vengeance. Dragonfire crashed upon galleon's deck. Crimson mages scattered, robes aflame despite enchantments. Chests ruptured, shards within popping like canal ice, releasing frigid vapors that clashed with dragon heat. Steam cloud boiled skyward, birthing rainbow halo. When mist cleared, only charred hull ribs jutted from sea. Ice evaporated, leaving brackish swirl of soot and melted frost hearts sinking to abyss. Back at Storm's End, Cassana's healers insisted bedrest after the frost impact. She chafed but obeyed, spending hours near open windows reading trade charters while gulls wheeled beyond battlements. Jon hovered like newly forged maester, fetching lemon water, stacking fleece across her feet. She tolerated fussing for a day before catching his wrist. "I did not marry a nurse," she teased. "Your realm demands forging." He brushed knuckles along her cheek. Realm can wait a breath for its hammer. She smiled, but concern lingered in her eyes. Door bolts rattle still. Tokero's ashes carry wind. We cut one hand. Others grow. Jon nodded, gaze drifting to the horizon where gray haze blurred sea sky line. We strengthen watch, naval and northern. Let every village muster beacons. He inhaled. And we name a heir. Her brow quirked. Our child not yet born. Name speaks promise, he replied. Promise steadies hearts. She considered. Edera if girl, after men who kept faith when hope broke. Erek, if boy, old Stormlander hero who rebuilt dikes after fires. Jon's throat tightened. Either will stand on both beaches. Autumn found Westeros colored by harvest gold. Grain commons swelled barns. Trade caravans threaded safe roads under Night's Watch Reforged escort. Yet rumors persisted. Fog-shrouded islands where fishermen vanished. Lone wolves found frozen in midsummer. A child in White Harbor whose tears formed icicles. Bran dreamed restlessly, muttering of deep winter cast adrift. In late frostfall, council convened at Riverrun, neutral ground closer to central holds. Sansa oversaw dais construction within Outer Bailey. Rabar Royce brought Vale falconers, their birds carrying message capsules. Prince Corrin's niece arrived on Palanquin, her cheeks flushed desert rose beneath fur trim. Edmure Tully hosted lavish fish feast. Even reluctant Victarion Greyjoy attended under banner of parley, single remaining longship crewed by oath-takers. Cassana traveled by covered wagon, midwife beside, Jon rode sentinel. Bran's sled braced across wagon deck, ravens circling overhead like silent magistrates. Council's first day saw heated debate on Iron Bank loan ceilings and tariffs on Tyroshi dyes. Second day pivoted to Ice Omen. Maester Sandor presented scrolls describing Heart's hard sickness. Victims touched by splinters fell fever cold, then rose with eyes pale blue yet pulse intact. Living whites. Shock rippled through assembly. Grey Worm offered unsullied patrol across stepstones. Rabar Royce clamored to seal ports. Sail lords balked at trade strangulation. Jon rose. Sealing doors traps smoke inside. We open them wider, but with watchful eyes. Lantern fleets patrolling coast, each vessel carrying wildfire caches. He looked to Victarion. Ironborn no tides. Join or find seas denied. Victarion grinned, gold tooth glinting. Kraken enjoys a hunt. We sail. Sansa proposed Harbor Purity Act. All incoming cargo inspected for unnatural frost. Shards destroyed by dragonflame or dragonglass hammers. Passed unanimous. But third-day thunderclouds loomed, both literal and political. Daenerys, returned from east that morning, brought troubling reports. Meereen Harbor iced overnight, dozens dead with lungs frozen inside ribs. She urged joint Iraq, expedition across narrow sea to purge cult cradle. Some lords balked. Grain reserves stretched thin, sailors scarce. Cassana summoned strength, speaking from cushioned chair. If we allow roots abroad, vines strangle home. We fund relief now or pay blood later. Her conviction swayed majority. Council committed 50 ships, half unsullied, half mixed Westerosi levies. Operation Winter Wake. 3 nights before fleet's departure, Cassana's labor started. Moon hung harvest orange. Jon paced storm's end solar, listening to muffled cries echo through corridors. Midwife emerged near dawn, face luminous. A daughter. He entered chamber. Cassana lay exhausted, hair pasted to temples, eyes shining as sea at sunrise. In her arms rested a swaddled infant, skin pale gold, tufts of dark brown hair, eyes closed. Tiny fist grasped Cassana's finger with surprising fury. Jon's chest flooded. He knelt, uncertain tears stinging. Cassana smiled, voice ragged. Meet Edera Arion Stormforge. Wolf, stag, and iron. He brushed baby's cheek. The newborn's eyes fluttered open. They were gray, not icy, not violet, but gentle northern steel threaded with copper flecks like Baratheon autumn leaves. She sees us, he breathed. She sees future, Cassana whispered. Weeks later, Fleet assembled in Blackwater Bay, lanterns glowing, sails catching dawn breeze. Jon, newly dubbed High Steward of Dawnforge Council, stood with Ed Era nestled against breastbone inside Link's first sling. Cassana, still pale but resolute, clasped his hand as Daenerys and Grey Worm boarded flagship Nissa Nissa. Gendry hammered final rivets on Lamprey-class patrol boats. Victarion snapped orders. Dornish vultures soared overhead. Jon felt the ocean pulse at his feet. Alive, hungry, waiting. He kissed Cassana's brow, then Edera's. "I sail but return," he said. She nodded, no tears. "Forge bright." Bran's voice drifted from ramp. "Tape folds again. Guide the needle straight." Jon smiled thinly. "I'll stitch, brother." As ropes loosed and drums thundered, Ed Era stirred, tiny fist reaching toward horizon glittering with possibility. A yes and threats alike. Jon followed her gaze. On that horizon, morning light refracted through high cirrus, forming a faint arc of ice blue and fire red. A bridge of colors bound. And for one fierce heartbeat, Jon believed that bridge foretold a realm forever reforged, where each day's dawn would be hammered brighter than the last upon the anvil of their shared resolve. He turned toward the sea, toward the unknown door once more rattling in the dark, and stepped aboard the flagship with his daughter's heartbeat echoing steady against his own, the strongest rhythm he had ever known. The voyage of the Winterwake Armada began beneath an ominous half-moon masked by sail-shrouding clouds, and the narrow sea received the host as if it had never known peace at all. Out on the mid-watch decks, the salt spray hissed against newly fitted ironcladding, while chain-damp pennants slapped each mast with the uneasy rhythm of soldiers rolling dice they could not read. On the flagship, the Jonquil's Vow, rechristened after one of King Ned's half-forgotten ballads, Jon Snow tasted the coming storm on every gust that lifted the black ribbons of his hair, and wondered which of the 43 hulls behind him would fail first if the Windtermage shards had truly seeded these waters. He stood on the starboard catwalk with Davos and Victarion Greyjoy debating sail trim, but his mind tugged constantly toward the aft cabin where Ed Era slept in a cradle lashed to bulkheads, cassia-scented blankets swaddling the tiny body that had already become an anchor for thousands of sailors they would never meet. Cassana had insisted he bring the child. "Not as hostage to fate," she said on the dawn before departure, "but as promise to sailors who will fight better if they believe dawn has a name." She had pressed a locket of orange blossom wax into Edera's palm and kissed Jon rigidly, as though memorizing every scar. He wore that memory now beneath wolfskin collar, though the weight felt heavier than chainmail. The shore, faint on the horizon, belonged to Myr. Past those candle-flecked speckles rose the hazy glow of Lys. Beyond that, the smoking sea haunted all compasses. Their targets lay in half-ruined Meereen and its satellite islands, strongholds where cult fragments worshipped frost hearts pulled from wrecked holds. Daenerys' scouts had glimpsed obelisks of translucent blue erected beside the slavers' harpy statues, each obelisk emitting the same sickly cold that once pulsed under Skagos. Worse, refugees whispered of living children branded with rune sigils and given shard slivers to suck on like candies, their laughter turning to glass chimes. Dusk bled into a night painted by invisible moons. On the quarterdeck Bran Stark lay strapped to weatherproof sled, ravens silent on perches, eyes white in half-trance. From time to time he muttered things like, "Water should not dream, yet it does," or "The mother of mountains shivers." And Davos would whisper throat prayers while sailors crossed themselves in 3 different faiths. It was during one such muttering that the first omen struck. A boom reverberated through the fleet line. Not thunder. Thicker, hollower. Jon squinted starboard. Far down the rank a Tyrell grain runner, the green garland, lurched unnaturally. Her hull iced over in moments, a pale crust climbing ratlins, transforming deckhands into glitter statues mid-shout. A second blast gusted. A wave of rime shot across water, creeping at horse gallop speed. "Hard to port," Victarion snarled.
Helmspun.
But the frost swath hit 4 smaller cogs before disintegrating into hissing vapor under dragonfire arcs from Drogon, who had been gliding star-high until that instant. Jon raced to midships where Scorpion operators cranked torsion arms. An orb of glowing sapphire the size of a boar's heart hung over the crippled green garland, held aloft by whirling glacial winds. Within its depths shapes swirled, childlike silhouettes with burning eyes. They pressed against inner surface as if desperate for release. "Heart's hardcore," one maester shouted. "They've grown it into a nest." Drogon dived, but before flame could melt the sphere, razor-thin icicle lances fired outward in starburst, impaling the dragon's left wing. The beast howled, spiraled. Riders gasped. Daenerys clung to harness lines. Flame guttered, then returned, severing 2 icy bolts midair. Regal streaked from clouds, emerald fire answering. This time the sphere cracked, webs of frost fracturing. Inside, the child shapes screamed neither like children nor wights but something halfway, song-like and searing. Shard fragments burst outward in scintillant hail. Where they hit sea, water froze to shards. Where they struck wood, planks split with cold so acute they popped like burning oil. Jon barked orders. Shield rose forward, dragonglass nets ready. He vaulted down to the longboat deck. Ghost, confined until now for his own safety, slammed paws against grate. Jon unbarred it and the dire wolf leapt to prow, hackles bristling. A third pulse rippled, a note rather than blast, crystalline reverberation sliding through bones. Bran shot upright, eyes black instead of white. "Wrong song," he rasped. Wind died, sails sagged, dead calm. On each vessel sailors stiffened. Frost whispered across iron. Men and women clutched ears, not from pain but entrancement. Jon felt lull too, a promise of weightless peace. The same seduction he'd known seconds before death at Castle Black years earlier. Ed Era cried from cabin doorway where wet-nursed Matt Rice clung, and that human wail shattered the enchantment. Jon blinked. Sailors shook heads. Bran collapsed, ravens shrieking. From aft horizons surged shapes. Barges carved from black ice, masts fashioned of frozen bone, sails spun of hoarfrost lace. Atop lead prow stood a figure in crimson, its shaved head etched with runes identical to the assassin's. She raised arms. Wakes of frost fountained ahead. "Full volley," Jon shouted. Scorpions thumped. Dragonglass shards streaked, exploding upon ice hulls in purple malevolent blossoms. Barges cracked like kettle ice under weight of charge. Yet more rose behind, dozens. Water boiled where undead oars churned. Each oarstroke birthed floating shards that spread like lily pads of ice. Drogon and Regal made second pass. Fire met frost in cyclonic swirl, birthing thick fog that glowed turquoise at core. Jon feared dragons too close might freeze inside own steam. He pounded deck. "Break formation. Ram them before freeze." Victarion's ship, the Red Reaver, roared forward, iron-spiked prow smashing through first ice barge. Shards flew, shredding sails. Living children wights toppled overboard, dissolving into blue foam. But another barge collided amidships. Frost spread. The Kraken sailors hacked with warmed hatchets. Fending. Jon saw an opening. Lower launch. He grabbed Half Moon board shield, dashed with Ghost and 10 blackshirts into longboat. They rowed across choppy slush towards lead frost vessel. Archers from Vow peppered deck cover. Jon leapt first, Longclaw decapitating a white child mid-spin. Its head dissolved to snow dust. He ducked under chops of frost-edged sickles wielded by mage thralls clothed in crimson scraps. Ghost attacked ankles, tripping. The Crimson Priestess confronted Jon amid swirling flakes. Her cyan eyes bore into his. "We sing the deep back to wake," she said, voice doubled by chorus of whispers far off. Jon felt drag of ancient cold inside skull. He gritted, slashed. She parried with crystal dagger that rang like icicles. Sparks of frost spattered deck. She thrust, nicking his cheek. Blood welled. She hissed delight. Ghost slammed her side. She stumbled. Jon cleaved downward. Longclaw snapped crystal dagger, cut into clavicle. But wound did not bleed red. Blue smoke streamed. She laughed, seized broken dagger half, plunged into her own chest. Crystal heart cracked. Shockwave of frost flared. Jon hurled himself backward as mast buckled. Ice veins spidered decks. He signaled retreat. Black shirts dragged oars, rowing through slush that thickened behind. The frost barge imploded, shards plunging ocean like glass rains. Back aboard Vow, maesters rushed with warming blankets coated in sun oil. Jon coughed ice crystals, lips numb. Bran emerged, still pale. The song shifted. They want you, Jon. King's blood, yes, but more blood touched by death than answered by fire. They believe you key to waking the drowned cold god. Jon wiped blood from cheek, red drop on black leather. Let them find locked gates. Daenerys landed, regal circling still. Lead barge destroyed, she reported, voice tinged with cold fury. But two slipped beneath surface. They burrow like ice sharks. Next strike could come from below. Davos suggested dropping wildfire casks on projected courses. Victorian red tides, plotted currents. Lantern Fleet realigned nets of weighted dragonglass spheres. Night raged white-blue-green as flame ice storms danced. By dawn, only 9 winter barges remained. Scattered, broken, adrift. Dragonfire melted last of them as sun's first rim parted cloud. But cost: 12 ships lost, 1 dragon wounded, 46 sailors frozen or drowned, and the fleet still had leagues to Meereen. Days blurred. At Meereen's delta, harpy statues now wore ice crowns. Slaver pyramids encased in rime glittered under desert sun. Jon, Daenerys, Grey Worm landed with spear seor squads. Resistance measured only by silence. Citizens fled inland when rivers first iced. In Temple Square they found central obelisk. Tower of translucent blue, 15 feet tall, carved with swirling glyphs. At Era, left aboard protected cabin, cried again though miles away. Obelisk pulsed in reply, harmonic trembling through paving stones. Near base, frozen corpses kneeled in prayer poses, pupils glazed white. Bran, carried by 2 unsullied, reached out with gloved hand. Heart alive, but untethered from wielder. He closed eyes. Shatter together, else shards will birth again. Jon and Daenerys exchanged looks. She mounted Drogon. Jon hefted dragonglass warhammer forged by Gendry. Grey Worm signaled archers to fall back. Drogon's flame hammered obelisk as Jon swung hammer at base simultaneously. Blue cracked. Jon's hammer shockwaves jarred arms. Brittle dark veins raced across crystal, but heat drew frost outward. Swirling energy siphoned. Jon felt tug inside bones. An echo of resurrection. Voices whispered, "Return, return, return." He staggered. Hammer slipped. Cassana's voice in memory. Forge bright. He roared, channeled anger, slammed again. Obelisk shrieked, sound of glaciers calving. Crystal ruptured into shards that erupted skyward, but Regal swooped, engulfing them in emerald fire while Drogon scorched base. Shards melted midair to glittering rain that steamed on pyramidal stones. Silence sat heavy. Then earth shook. A roar beneath Saul's, not dragon. River waters reversed moment, gushing seaward. Bran's ravens screamed. He gasped, "Door of water slams." But another latch breaks, west of Valyria. He clutched chest. "We chase echoes forever if roots remain." Daenerys knelt. "We continue along chain to source." Jon's eyes bleak, understanding weight. The smoking sea maelstrom. Fleet reprovisioned at Meereen's thawing docks. Volunteers remained to resettle. Jon wrote letters to Cassana, updates, confessions of fear, sealed with wolf stag wax, entrusted to fastest gull-winged ravens. He missed her steady spine even more now, missed Eddara's fragile coups. But war demanded distance. They rounded Basilisk Isles under constant haze. Scouts reported smaller shard totems rising like toadstools on unmarked atolls. Fleet split. Patrol squadrons scoured each, dragons burning nests. Victarion's Reaver guarded rear. At dusk of 31st sailing day, Lookout spotted the black cliffs of Valyria. The smoking sea churned, thick as tar, venting metallic stench.
No birds flew.
Bran claimed old spells still lingered. mutating any living flesh dared approach. But shards cared little for such divides. Daenerys insisted only dragons and small crew sail into Caldera to spare fleet. Jon refused to let her alone. They chose four: Jon, Grey Worm, Bran, and Davos as helmsmen. Drogon and Rhaegal would ferry them, towing a skiff laden with wildfire cauldrons and a newly forged Valyrian steel spike, Dragon's Nail. Lightning flickered, though no storm present. Sea bubbled sulfur. Shattered towers of old Valyria jutted like broken ribs. And there, at Maelstrom's core, rose vast ice column taller than Winterfell's broken tower, spinning slowly, fed by cold rising from impossible depths. Around its circumference orbited dozens of smaller spheres pulsing starlight. Song chilled marrow. Jon felt it not in ears but blood. Rhythmic invitation. Bran convulsed. We stand above heart of drowned god. Cannot climb while fire breathes, but shards build staircase. Jon unslung dagger, Valyrian steel gifted by Sansa. We pull staircase down. Dragons circled. Jon, Grey Worm, Davos secured skiff within eddies. Heat of Drogon's underbelly fought ice air. Grey Worm hurled first wildfire pot. It struck lower spheres. Explosion vaporized three, but chain reaction launched shards like meteors. One skimmed Rhaegal's belly, scoring scales. Jon climbed spike mast, hammering pitons into ice column base. Freezing mist-coated gloves. He drove Dragon's Nail deep, cracks spidering. Davos poured wildfire down fissure.
Grey Worm l'y fuse.
They dove back into skiff. Flames erupted within column, colors unnatural. Black, violet, shifting hues. But column absorbed heat, surface turning mirror smooth. Bran moaned. Song reversed. They use fire to temper, not melt. Jon cursed. Need dragonfire inside core. Daenerys guided Drogon into near-vertical dive. Jon and Grey Worm reboarded harness lines midair. Jon shouted plan. Drogon must enter wound Jon creates, but beast might not escape. Daenerys met his gaze across swirling ash. Dragons were born for doomsday. We choose whether doom frees future or buries it. She urged Drogon to hover. Jon, balancing on spines, jammed spear of Valyrian into wound, prizing hole wider. Shards shot outward. One pierced his thigh. Numb ice seeped through nerve. Still he twisted blade until cavity inhaled. Rhaegal blasted forging flame into aperture. Drogon followed, adding white-hot core flame. Ice lit from within, humming. Jon felt shard in thigh vibrate. Grey Worm hauled him back. They fled as column glowed brighter, vibrating pitch tone that shattered basalt pinnacles like crystal glasses. Waves reversed, maelstrom sinking. Daenerys directed dragons skyward. At 1,000 feet, a bloom of azure flame swallowed column, turning to black steam that spiraled into clouds. Shockwave threw them belly up. Jon lost grip, dangled from harness by ankle until Grey Worm secured second strap. When blast winds ceased, Caldera lay still. Sea hissed, but no whirlpool churned. Shard fragments melted to silver puddles. Jon's thigh burned, but color returned. Bran's sled perched on Rhaegal's neck like figurehead. As normal now, the drowned god's heart cracks. No more stairs, he sagged. But echoes forever. Daenerys landed skiff on shattered quay of Old City. Jon staggered onto rock, knee buckling but steady after. They helped Bran dismount. Davos pressed tourniquet on Jon's thigh. Silence like none before enveloped them. No wind, no gulls, just distant drip of melted ice. Jon felt weight lift, as though chain removed across continents. He looked west. Dawn, their tinted clouds rose gold. Let's go home. Return voyage uneventful but healing. Dragons soared freely. Shard sickness in port ceased days after columns fall. Letters reached from Cassana. Pregnancy strong, Edera babbling first syllables, storm's end orchard blooming. Jon's heart ached but soared. At last sails of Westerosi coast rose. Fleets anchored in Blackwater. Fisherfolk cheered dragons instead of cowering. Jon rode hard north to Storm's End. He arrived twilight. Cassana met him under arch. She looked luminous, child on hip. Edera giggled, reaching. Jon embraced them, tears mixing with sea salt. Later Bran confirmed residual shard echo dispersed. Doors quiet now, he said, though leaving warning. But men build new doors. Jon nodded, knowing vigilance duty without end. Winterfree's cult remnants hunted, but no new shards surfaced. Realm resumed forging plowshares. Years spilled. Edera learned to walk along battlements chasing ghosts' descendants. Cassana taught squires spear dance, even 8 moons pregnant with second child, Alaric. Daenerys created Congress of Isles and Rivers where each region elected delegates. Jon resigned high stewardship once structures self-sustained, choosing instead to travel yearly, inspecting watch garrisons, reminding edges they were not forgotten. On Edera's 8th name day, he led her to Winterfell's heart tree. Snow dusted her dark copper hair. She asked whether winter would ever truly end. It ends each time dawn rises, he said, crouching. But winter always returns, so we keep building hearths. She pressed small palm to tree bark. Forge bright, she quoted Mother. Jon smiled, feeling warmth pulse through living wood, through veins. Forge bright, he echoed, and in the hush of that gods would he heard no songs of frost or ash, only heartbeat of a realm at peace for now, hammering future with each choice, each dawn. Forever reforging. The late spring clouds over Winterfell rolled like battered banners, their underbellies purpled by the retreating sun. But even dusk's bruised light could not dim the restless hum filling the castle's stone arteries. Gossip raced quicker than ravens. The High Council of Dawnforge would convene in the north for the first time since the Wars of Frostheart Fire, and with it came Jon Snow, the Wolfstag Reforger, his queen consort Cassana, their 8-year-old daughter Edera, their 5-year-old son Alaric, and an escort large enough to suggest both ceremony and lingering caution. The roads from Moat Cailin glittered with wheel-rut puddles after recent rains. Karstark outriders posted every mile, and Waynwood falconers circled overhead like living pennants marking the route. Inside the old city, preparations felt as much harvest festival as state summit. Spears of new grain thrust through crofts beyond the walls. Stalls overflowed with oatcakes, smoked trout, cloudberry tarts. The small folk craned necks at the foreign dignitaries arriving by the hour. Dornish emissaries cloaked in dyed linen as bright as sunset, ironborn captains bearing iron tokens hammered into kraken spirals, Braavosi bankers clutching folios sealed in vermilion wax, the latter having doubled their interest in Westerosi ports once shard sickness waned. Even the Vale had relented, sending Rabar Royce flanked by 30 winged knights in shimmering gull white. Yet among all these, no arrival inspired more whispers than the singular Raven Shadow carriage that bore Bran Stark, for the sight of the realm's green seer, grown solemn in his 2nd decade of otherworld wandering. Still unsettled even the most jaded merchant. Edera's laughter preceded the royal party down the Godswood path, Ghost's grandson, Snowdrift, loping sentinel as though pup and child were hopped on the same invisible leash. Jon followed at measured pace, Cassana by his side, her spear replaced by a short cane since Alaric's difficult birth had strained ligaments no Maester Poultice fully soothed. She refused a litter, though. Walking reminded her she still commanded her own weather. Behind them padded half a dozen watch cadets, A's newest guardians, lads and lasses chosen for unwavering nerves around children who might chase crannig frogs straight across a parapet if nobody shouted quick enough. Under the heart tree, Bran waited without ceremony, sled nestling among bright moss. Ravens gathered upon the gnarled red branches like black-beaked fruit. The face carved into white bark looked less sorrowful than Jon remembered, more curious, perhaps reflecting the subtle ease that came into Bran's voice these past few untroubled years. "You brought them all," Bran said as Edera skidded to a halt before him, cheeks smudged with spring mud freckles. "Mother always said snow children roam wider circles than hounds." Edera curtsied more or less. "Uncle Bran, Mama says tomorrow you'll show us the ice flowers that only open at night. If the sky stays clear," Bran promised. "They shy away from crowds and torch smoke." Cassana inclined her head, gingerly lowering herself onto a stone near the pool. "If they trust torchlight little, best we set no lamps where they bloom." Bran's pale eyes sharpened on her cane, but he asked no afterbirth sorrows. His second sight likely knew more of her aches than she cared to. He turned to Jon instead. The council expects ledger figures, port manifests, treaties, paper talk. He tapped sled rail. But there's deeper water swirling under that. The rhythm changed while you sailed Valyria and grew steady the moment the column fell. Now it falters again, not with frost song but with something older. Older than ice? Jon asked, half dread, half resignation. Older than words carved into trees, Bran said. Not hostile yet, but restless, like another heart waking elsewhere. Cassana's brow creased. Magic seldom sleeps easy. She rubbed Edora's shoulders. We've abetted one plague. New seeds sprout. Jon exhaled, tasting pine resin and memory. Tease out what you can tonight. We need context before lords taste panic. Bran's mouth tilted. I cannot promise full tapestry, only scattered threads, but I'll knot what I find. The next dawn broke opalescent, winter's breath finally relinquishing the north to heavy thaw. Color woke across every banner strung from gatehouse gables. Lords assembled in the great hall under interwoven sigils. Direwolf, stag, dragon, sun, spear, kraken, moon, falcon, lion, yes, even golden lions now, for gentle-tempered Tommen Lannister, self-styled Lord of the Westmarch after renouncing ancestral claim to the Iron Throne, had arrived by secret midnight passage to prove the Westerlands sought seats not swords. Before the dais, Sansa Stark, Lady Paramount of the North, opened proceedings. Her red copper hair coiled elegantly, but the steel beneath her courtesy shone brighter than her chain of office. She laid 3 scrolls upon a broad oak table, one red-ribbon petition from the Free Cities, requesting relay ports for the Great Eastern Rebuilding Fleet. One green-sealed memorandum from the Tyrell Regency, outlining severe blight on barley in the Shield Isles, and one curious scrap of faded parchment apparently delivered by Gull without seal at all. The unknown note arrived first, she said, hands folded. It bears no crest, but the script appears Skagosi Ashunii, a dialect seldom used outside clan ledgers. It claims a wrong tide gnaws cliffs north of the Frostfangs, birthing red foam and silent wails. They beseech help, not tribute. A murmur rippled. Tormund Giant's Bane, wild grey now but barrel-chested as always, slammed his drinking horn on rail. Skagosi know to holler loud after last shard tempest. Red foam sounds gut poor omen. Jon addressed the assembly. I'll dispatch a watch skimmer by week's end. If tide churns unnatural, we test water, gather any residue. He gestured to the Eastern Fleet petition. Meanwhile, Bravos and Pentos asked to anchor at White Harbor for refit before rounding Sunspear. Accepting means trade profit and goodwill. Refusing pushes them to Assarian Straits. Farther, riskier. Lord Manderley, jowls flushed, leaned forward. My harbor can service 20 keels at once. But my quays creak from grain surpluses owed the commons. We'd need repair levy. Tommen Lannister spoke next, voice cautious, but earnest. The Westmarch forges steel planks stronger than southern pine. We pledge materials at cost if North's carpenters train our apprentices in frost-resistant joinery. A fair trade, Sansa acknowledged, noting scribes' quills scratching. Third scroll, Tyrell barley crisis, proved trickiest. Lady Mara Tyrell, regent for her toddler niece, half rose from cushioned seat. The blight spreads fast. We ask council to divert Riverland's oats south for 2 planting cycles. That request risked shortages for garrisons guarding the Vale's passes and Night's Watch rotating detachments. Edmure Tully pinched bridge of nose. Our surplus slim, we suffered flood on Mander. Cassana, from Dais side, lifted cane gently. Stormlands yields bumper rye this year, we can spare quarter. Dragonstone greenhouses produce winter kale, nutrient-dense, easier to ship dried. Mix rations so each region shares burden. Grey Worm, representing unsullied Free Cities Coalition, inclined his scarred head. We can escort shipments along narrow sea to deter corsair raids. Agreement weaved, compromises hammered. Morning waned into midday. Bran arrived late, pushed by a silent acolyte, Ravens absent today. His posture suggested weight borne within rather than on shoulders. Sansa paused proceedings. The Green Seer brings counsel, she declared. Hall quieted. Bran's voice felt distant yet clear. Last night I dreamt rootless light, green and red crossing deep below shivering sea, older than ice hearts, not cold but hot, forging something. It draws breath through fissures left by the drowned column. Perhaps forging good, perhaps forging doom. Daenerys, seated near blazing hearth, fingered dragonscale brooch. Does it threaten realms soon? Not yet, but tides shift. Whalebones cracking mean pulses ripple out. We watch, learn shape, but not freeze counsel with fear. He turned milky eyes on Jon. The Watch's motto remains. Swords in the dark. Darkness changes hue. Jon dipped head. We'll extend patrols across Northern Sea. Ironborn volunteers know those waters. Victarion, arms folded, grunted assent. The session concluded with signing of the White Harbor Accords, Eastern Fleet Harbor Rights, Frost Resilience Exchange, West March North Carpentry Barter, and Verdant Vow, Grain Diversion Alliance. Quills scratched, wax seals hissed. Snowdrift barked outside, chasing Edera and Alaric between legs of startled stewards. That night banquet tables sagged under moose haunch, root veg casseroles, Dornish citrus compotes. Minstrels played strings, but conversation focused on deeper currents than music. Lords speculating about Bran's rootless light, envoys whispering of old Valyrian vents still smoking, bankers comparing ledgers of iceblight insurance claims. Cassandra sat flanked by Mara Tyrell and Rabar Royce, rolling stiff-shoulder when she thought none watched. Jon, in talk with Lord Glover, noticed and excused himself. He reached her just as Mara commented softly, "Dangerous for Queen to travel while mending joints." Cassandra replied with polite steel, "My cane is reminder, not chain. Storm oaks flex so they don't snap." Jon slipped hand over hers. She squeezed, eyes easing. Later, in Winterfell solar adorned with new tapestries, direwolf pups chasing stags beneath stars. Jon helped Cassandra settle by hearth. He brushed her dark hair gently while embers crackled. "You hid pain," he murmured. "I slow counsel if they fret," she answered. "World's weight grows again. Cannot rest all on your shoulders." He kissed her temple. "We crafted counsel to share load. Even storms must moor." He coaxed warm salve along her knee, speaking of tomorrow's agenda. Free Cities delegation, Night's Watch funding. She listened, but gaze wandered to sliver of moon outside. "Edera asked me whether red foam means whales bleed," she whispered. "I said not yet, but truth, I don't know." He placed salve jar aside. "Whatever births that foam must pass by our watchers. We'll guard whales, children, hopes." She smiled tiredly, drifting toward sleep. A fortnight later, word arrived from Skagosi watchers. Entire colony of narwhals beached near Eastwatch, tusks cracked, tongues blistered as though scalded then frozen. Water tinted faint crimson. Samples sent south clotted into jelly studded with minuscule glass beads. Red at core, cool to touch. Maester Sandor declared it not blood alone but mineral unknown, possibly crystallized by magic. Jon ordered retrieval of living specimen if any found submerged. 3 days of search netted a single calf sick but breathing. Its veins glowed weak crimson. In Old Town, archmesters dissected tissue under glass. They uncovered filaments laced with volcanic residue fused to a greenish alloy reminiscent of Valyrian steel impurities. The calf expired, sample kept under cold spells. Bran's dreams sharpened. He saw hourglass drains near the Three Sisters sucking warm currents northward. Glimpsed a cavern beneath smoking sea newly cooled, lined with molten rims shaped by unknown smiths. Neither Valyrian nor Shardmage. Something forging indeed. Meanwhile, Eastern Rebuilding Fleet arrived at White Harbor. 22 hulks loaded with cedar, marble, steppe grain. Dockworks thrived. Manderley hailed dawn of new golden tide. Yet one Lysine galley logged odd phenomena crossing stepstones. Compass needles spinning, water beneath hull glowing faint green at night. They captured no shard presence. Jon faced crossroads. North demanded his leadership for foam mystery. Dawnforge Council urged he oversee final agreements at Sunspear with Associ envoys. Sansa offered to lead Southern Voyage. Rabar Royce volunteered Vale Rangers to join Watch. Cassana Council divide once more. Realm thrives when we delegate. Go south, sign May's import charters. I will ride to Eastwatch, spear in Kane's stead. Adara comes with me. Learn duty. Jon hesitated. Her age tender for such shores. She rode Skagos as babe and kept heart warm, Cassana countered. She will learn fear's opposite, vigilance. He agreed with misgiving. Before parting, Bran requested journey east with Cassana. Ravens restless to map currents. They left Winterfell in small column. Cassana, Adara, Bran, 30 Watch veterans, 15 Maester acolytes carting instruments, plus snowdrift bounding. Jon watched them vanish through Wolfswood, heart tugging yet trusting. At Eastwatch by the sea the world felt both new and hauntingly old. Rebuilt timber ramparts gleamed resin-rich. New lighthouse tower ringed with dragonglass fins. The beach, though, stank of decay. Narwhal carcasses rotted despite chill winds. Gulls refused to feed. Red foam lapped. Cassana oversaw burial trenches. Adara helped stack driftwood markers, solemn. Bran's ravens traced circles out to sea, returning with seashells fused to glassy crusts. Acolytes collected tidipools filled with luminescent algae never documented. One morning a watch scout found a slab of black volcanic basalt washed ashore, etched with grooves reminiscent of forging runes, but curved lines rather than shard angularity. Bran pronounced it script from deep earth murmuring. Carried inside, its surface steamed when warmed by hearth, releasing tiny motes of red-green light that danced before dissolving. Edara's natural curiosity led her to study the slab nightly. During one session she pressed ear against warm basalt, claimed to hear whale songs backwards. Cassana gently dissuaded, but scribes recorded nonetheless. On 7th Eastwatch sunrise the sea calmed strangely, glass-like, no waves. Gulls fell silent. Dogs whined. Bran wheeled onto parapet. Eyes rolled. Door opens. He pointed northeast where horizon glowed faint scarlet. Through spyglass Cassana glimpsed arch of water lifting above sea like serpent crest, twisting into cathedral of red foam. Within its hollow, dark silhouettes, shipforms, whale carcasses, hard to say. Then arch collapsed, sending tidal iridescence. A roar reached shore seconds later, striking wall like hammer though wave itself harmless. Moments after, beach waters frothed. Small crimson shards tumbled ashore, hexagonal crystals softer than shard hearts. Acolytes retrieved cautiously. Under glass they pulsed with heat, not cold. Bran declared, "This is rootless light, the forging. Fire born of sea, not of volcano." Cassana dispatched Raven to Jon, summarizing, "New crystals warm, forging unknown. Could be cure or curse." Jon received letter in Sunspear's jasmine-fragrant court, where Tyrell barge masters bartered saffron for rivets and Associ artisans unveiled floating gardens. He excused himself from treaty feast, reading Cassana's update twice. Red warm crystals, opposite of frost hearts. Fire hearts? He consulted Daenerys via glass candle. She suggested possibility of oceanic volcano tapping still-hot dragon corridors under the world, mixing magic residue with seawater. If so, crystals might hold benign energy or volatile. Jon decided he must travel north after sealing charters. Sansa insisted she handle remaining negotiations. He accepted with gratitude. Tommen Lannister gifted 5 ironclad longships to escort him upriver, each with reinforced hulls in case unknown currents attacked. En route, Bran sent Raven, "Rootless light stable, but we dare not test on living flesh. Child listens to songs, should discourage."
Jon quickened pace.
Back at Eastwatch tide patterns normalized, crystals ceased washing ashore. Maesters stored samples in obsidian vault. Yet Adara remained fascinated. One evening Bran found her near slab again, humming odd melody. She claimed tune helped slab pulse calmer. Bran recorded tonal intervals. Cassana's knee flared pain under creeping chill. Wind shifting again. She resolved to depart before weather worsened. Departure day. Final crate of crystals loaded onto horse sled. Edera begged to keep one tiny shard no bigger than dice. Cassana relented after ensuring vault-sealed coating around it and stern lecture. No touching without gloves, no placing near heat. Edera promised. The column set south. 2 nights later they camped at a ruined watchtower near Long Barrow. Moonless, quiet. In deepest hours Cassana woke to humming low, resonant, coming from Edera's tent. She entered, heart hammering. The shard glowed faint amber, not red. Edera sat cross-legged, eyes closed, singing gentle phrase of high Valyrian lullaby Daenerys had taught months prior. Shard pulsed with each note, brighter than soft. No heat radiated. Cassana touched daughter's shoulder. Song stopped, shard dimmed. Edera blinked. Mama, stone likes lullaby. It sleeps. Cassana hesitated. Who told you to sing? No one, it asked. She pointed to slab piece near pillow. Like baby crying. Cold prickled Cassana's skin. She pocketed shard carefully. Jon reunited with family at Winterfell 3 weeks later. Relief washed through as he lifted Edera in his arms. She whispered secret about singing stone. He stiffened, shared with Cassana. They conferred Bran. Bran studied shard. It responds not to blood, but vibration. Frequency closest to lullaby harnesses energy, diffuses. He traced his gloved thumb over facets. Potential tool, warm houses, heal frostbite, or weapon doubly dire if warped. Council summoned. Maesters proposed controlled experiments. Wildling herbalists volunteered. Tyrell scholars expressed interest in heat-free ovens. Dangers obvious. Decision. Secure crystals with infused dragonglass lattice. Research in Citadel under watch guard. Edera discouraged from contact, though Bran convinced her to record lullaby exactly, not to sing again unsupervised. Years marched. Edera blossomed into tall girl of 14, skilled at spear forms despite mild limp from growth spurt. Alaric shadowed her, ardent with bow. Cassana's knee ossified but rarely failed. Jon's temples streaked gray, but his core remained the North's metronome. Dawnforge Council stabilized trade, resumed Valyrian road salvage, instituted rotating forge days, where commoners consulted lords without petition fees. Firehearts, as crystals dubbed, proved boon. When encased in tempered glass and sung to once, they emitted gentle warmth for months, replacing half-wood consumption in northern holdfasts. Citadel regulated distribution. Each heart registered, lullaby sung by sworn sisters trained in pitch discipline. Incidents minimal, yet not all hearts remained docile. One shipment to Iron Islands overheated after sailors drunkenly sang bawdy sea chanties. Not the regulated lullaby. Crate exploded, scalding deck. Victorian wrote apology to council. Burned remains at sea. Rogue merchants sought black market firehearts. Some copied lullaby incorrectly, causing shards to crack into embers that burrowed flesh like bees. Council created ember wardens to police trade. Edera, 17, petitioned to join. Parents wary but allowed apprenticeship under Doran Marsh, famed Stormlander investigator. She excelled. Alaric studied with maesters, fascinated by acoustics. He built prototype Songforge, bellows funnel channeling shard resonance through bronze tubes to shape metal without coal. Gendry praised, though initial tests warped blades into abstract sculptures. On Edera's 20th Nameday Council recalled earlier dreams. Bran felt new stirring near Summer Sea Trench. Fire and ice converging? They planned expedition. Edera chose an emissary, Alaric as engineer. Bran declined due to health. Cassana remained governor of Stormlands, Jon vigilant warden of North. Before sailing, Edera visited Godswood. Snowdrift long passed. New direwolf pup. Sprig trailed. She placed palm on heart tree, whispering personal vow. Guard forge, chase darkness, sing right songs. Jon watched. Pride mingled with dread. He laid Longclaw in her hands. now rehinged for lighter reach. May this never need speak louder than your voice, he said. She smiled. Mix of mother's storm, father's winter. I'll keep dawn bright, Papa. Sails unfurled. Ship names bore hope. Aegon's mercy, Elenia's star, Forge's promise. Dragon's sword escort. Jon stood on Winterfell battlement long after they vanished, orange blossom scent riding southern breeze memory. Cassandra joined, leaning on Cain. Neither spoke. They knew cycles spin, doors close, others open. Rootless light forging, darkness echoing, but always hearts beating beneath hammer strokes. Below, in courtyard, apprentices sang forging chant. Lullaby repurposed into rhythmic cadence for new billet of iron. Sparks rose like little suns fading into dusk. Jon's breath misted, though summer thrived. He wrapped arm around Cassandra. Do you worry the song changes again? She asked. Songs always change, he replied. But we taught our children harmony. Whatever notes come, they'll find melody. She leaned head to his shoulder. In gathering twilight they listened. Clang of hammers, murmur of river beyond walls, hush of leaves. Distant yet undeniable, the future's chorus, part sorrow, part wonder, unfurled its score. They did not know if next stanza bore storm or calm, only that the forge remained and dawn would come, and House Reforged would be waiting, hammer raised, ready to mold whatever metal the world delivered into shapes of hope.